Hey everybody, happy Monday. Today is Monday, March 29th. Welcome to another episode of TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon and I'm super excited to be hosting today's broadcast. We have a great lineup of interviews as always on today's show. We've got lots and lots of topics ranging from low code to cybersecurity and beyond, but we are going to get right into those conversations, and we're going to be starting out with a conversation that Alan has with Bradley Rzudzki, who is the principal engineer at Harness. He used to be with Drone. And we catch up with Bradley, find out what he's been doing in the last 6 months since Drone was acquired by Harness, what his new role is, and what's going on with him. So it's a great conversation. After that, Alan speaks with Philippe Humeau, who's the CEO of CrowdSec. I actually spoke with him a couple weeks ago about his company, and Alan and Philippe kind of further that conversation. Just to recap, CrowdSec is a crowdsourced security solution, completely open source. They analyze user behavior and provide an adapted response to all kinds of attacks. It's great technology and definitely worth a second look. So Philippe and Alan talk more about CrowdSec and the technology in general. After that, Alan speaks with Andy Ellis. We all know Andy Ellis, who was the longtime CSO over at Akamai. Andy and his wife, Giselle, have recently launched a new adventure. It's called Druha.co, and it is about teaching leadership and raising up the next generation of leaders, and that is something I think we can all get behind. So Alan and Andy have a discussion about what they hope to accomplish with Druha and why they thought it was so necessary to have an adventure such as this one. It's a great conversation. After that, we have a part one of a multi-part series of the Haunted Hacker podcast. In this one, Mike Jones, the host, has a conversation with Craig Ford. He is a senior solutions or senior security architect with a company called Bidom Solutions. He's also a pretty well-known author in the cybersecurity space and cybersecurity expert all the way around. It's a great conversation that Mike and Craig have, and Craig is a very, very upbeat guy. He's got a lot of really cool things to say about cybersecurity in general, so definitely a conversation worth checking out. After that, we have our Something Old section or segment, and that is from the recent Predict 2021 conference virtual summit that we hosted. This one is with Stu Miniman, and he speaks about 5 Kubernetes trends for 2021. Stu talks about the evolution of Kubernetes, and as it has entered a new phase of maturity with many organizations, he takes a look at what is next. So he also offers some great advice for teams that are now grappling with the complexity of Kubernetes, and if you are using Kubernetes at all, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a great presentation, offers a lot of takeaways for organizations that are using Kubernetes. Definitely a conversation worth checking out. After that, I come back with the news headlines as always, and then I have a conversation with Araz Yalan, who's the head of security research at Checkmarx. He and I have a discussion about cross-site scripting vulnerabilities that the Checkmarx recently found in the Desk Pro remote help desk software. They were kind of poking around and discovered the vulnerabilities, and it really speaks to a larger issue of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities that are very, very prevalent in a lot of software out there these days, the web-based software. And we talk about the larger issue of cross-site scripting and why it's important for organizations to recognize what it is and its impact on security overall. So it's a great conversation. After that, I speak with Aaron Stewart, who is the founder of Job.com. He and I have a frank discussion on the impact of the impact of the pandemic on working women, and it speaks to and then we have a larger discussion roles in the workplace during the pandemic. This is a very, very illuminating conversation. If it's not something that you've been thinking about during the pandemic, the the impact that the pandemic has had on gender equity in general, but specifically on working women and how their roles have been kind of compressed and changed during the pandemic. It's definitely one you want to check out. Aaron and I, he offers up some statistics that his company has unveiled during a couple surveys, and the results are very, very illuminating. It's definitely a conversation worth checking out. All right, after that, I have the webinar preview, as I always do. And then we have Mitch Ashley's Analyst Corner segment. In this one, he explores the growth in low-code, no-code over the past year. We've been talking a lot about low-code and no-code applications and software and solutions over the past year, and the way that it has helped a number of organizations kind of get over the hump, if you will, in their digital transformation efforts. We take a look at whether low-code, no-code is really all it's cracked up to be. Can low-code and no-code actually happen in a bubble outside of IT? It's a really, really fascinating discussion that Mitch has basically with himself, but he offers up some really great insight into low-code, no-code, and what we can expect based on what we've seen in the past. So great stuff. All right, as I said before, this is a great lineup on today's TechStrong TV broadcast, and we're going to get things kicked off right after these commercial messages. All right, first up on today's TechStrong TV broadcast, we have a conversation between Alan and Bradley Rzucki, who is the principal engineer at Harness. He talks about his new role at Harness in the 6 months since Drone was acquired by Harness. A great conversation. Let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another TechStrong TV segment. My guest this segment is Brad Rzucki. I said it so good and now I messed it up. Did I? Okay. Hey Brad, welcome to TechStrong TV. How are you?
Good, thanks Alan. Appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure to have you on, my friend. So Brad, you're a principal engineer with Harness.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't think needs any introduction to our audience. They're frequently we have Harness folks on here from Giodi on down. But you are also one of the co-founders, if I'm not mistaken, of Drone.io, which Harness acquired now about 6 months ago, right?
Yes.
Cool. And I just want to set the table for the audience. So Harness is obviously one of the leaders in this kind of new forming CD market where cloud native is dominant, and some of the old CI/CD solutions that we've had over the last 9-10 years are a little long in the tooth, and they're being replaced now by a new generation, of which Harness is one. Now Drone.io, though, well, why don't you tell our audience? I've done enough talking, Brad. Tell us about Drone.io and how you came to be at Harness.
Sure. So Drone is a continuous integration server. It was actually built back in 2013, right at the start of what you would describe as kind of the container revolution. And so for those that maybe aren't familiar with continuous integration, the idea is, right, you have teams of developers, they're all making changes, they're all pushing those changes. And so systems like Drone take all those changes, They build, they test, they make sure nothing's broken, they build your artifacts, and then you ship it off, and that's what enables continuous delivery. And so, Drone was really one of the first, if not the first, continuous integration systems to adopt container technology. So we actually execute all your builds and tests in containers. So it's kind of like a bring your own build environment. And so that was, I think, something that was very unique to Drone, because it made it very much self-service.
Absolutely. And then, as I remember the beginning of the container, kind of modern container movement with Solomon Hykes and the folks at Docker. And I think the first time I saw Solomon speak was at a conference called like Glue. It's in Colorado. It used to be in Colorado every year back in the day. And was like, wow, this is such a great tool for developers. They're going to flock to this. And they did, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And not just developers, but DevOps.
Yeah, we launched Drone, the open source project in 2013. I think we actually unveiled it at Docker headquarters. It was at a time when there were around 12 people. And, it was really the first piece of software out there that like deeply integrated with Docker and used Docker as the underlying engine. So we were, right there at the beginning of containers. And in the very first week, I think we were, and for the whole first year of our launch, we were one of the top trending projects on GitHub. It really resonated with developers. Sure did.
And then, so how do we go from, Docker to Harness?
Sure. Like every startup, there is, what's the saying, like a 10-year overnight success, but
yeah, exactly.
A lot of time, after the launch, just iterating, building community, working with community. It was just all about putting in the time and the effort, and just Drone continued to grow. I think, if you look at measuring open source community, some people look at stars or number of forks. So we've got something like 23,000 GitHub stars, thousands of people in our chat rooms. And so we grew it over the course of probably about 5 years, focused just purely on open source. And then the last couple of years started to turn that into a commercial open source company, where we introduced some enterprise features, and we used, we tried to monetize the project so we could sustain the open source piece.
Mm-hmm. And then when did the Harness piece come into it?
Sure. So about 8 months ago, you probably know it, right? As a former founder, that there's always inbound acquisition interest in a company. So these are things you're always thinking of. And timing felt right. I mean, there's a lot of consolidation happening, in the space, and Harness is kind of on this rocket ship, right? They're doing phenomenal. They've got a best in breed CD product, and it just seemed like the right time to kind of partner with them. There's just so much synergy between CI and CD, and so I thought, rather than Drone trying to go it alone, that we would be better together. And so I reached out to Jody. Actually, it was a cold email over LinkedIn. He and I have never actually met in person, by the way, right? This all happened over Zoom, right?
COVID times, man, crazy.
COVID acquisition. So
yeah,
and
that is crazy.
Yeah, he agreed it was a great fit, and now here we are.
Very cool. As we were talking offline, right? So I'm the founder here at MediaOps. And I get those emails all the time. You've thought about your exit strategy, but I don't have time for that, right? I run my business, especially here, because I didn't do the venture back thing here. It's a different kind of ball game. But, in previous companies, I've sold companies, right, to larger companies. And I was also part of a roll-up where we did 30 acquisitions in 36 months. Wow. It's almost one a month. It's crazy. And
I can't imagine having done one.
Oh, you can't. Because you know what they say? You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. We broke more than a few eggs. But that being said, our basic operating MO was, look, you do an acquisition, leave the company alone for 6 months, right? Let it get comfortable being part of this larger org and figure out where the talent is, who's staying, who's going, who's leaving, how best to integrate it, how to not lose customers. And then at 6 to 8 months, you start that kind of integration thing going. But that's not really the case from what I'm seeing here with Drone and Harness, is it? Or is it?
So, yeah, I mean, I think you're pretty much spot on, right? So, Harness, open source is a huge part of Harness's strategy going forward.
Right.
And so one thing they love about Drone is it brings a huge open source community with it. Harness wants to invest in that. They want to nurture that. And so, and Drone is open source, right? So we're going to keep investing in Drone. Harness made that commitment, 6 months ago, and they stayed true to that, right? Especially with this, big launch we have coming up for Drone 2.0. But in addition, one of the things that we're doing is we're taking the best parts of Drone and bringing that into the Harness platform, so you really get that CI and CD side by side. And so it's kind of like best of both worlds. We're building parts of Drone into Harness, but then Drone as an open source project gets a level of autonomy.
Absolutely. Well, what's nice is, look, Harness was almost solely CD, not CI. So you needed some CI kind of functionality here. But, you need today, tomorrow's CI, not yesterday's CI. And today, tomorrow's CI is very cloud native based, right?
Yes.
If it's not cloud native, you're kind of missing the boat. And so Drone is a really good fit for that, to give Harness instant CI on their CD, right?
Yes.
It makes all the sense in the world. You mentioned Drone 2.0.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So, one of the benefits of an acquisition, especially, from Drone into a company like Harness, is the resources we now have available to us that we didn't before. One of which is an incredible design team, more engineering resources. And so, for about I'm going to say at least a year, we have a large design team that's been doing UX research, and they've been coming up with, the new design language, the new user experience for the Harness product line, right? That hasn't been launched yet. But we've actually brought that to Drone. So that massive investment they've made is actually, is coming to the open source community and the open source version of Drone, and it looks really slick. And so I think what it just does is it elevates the project. Open source projects aren't typically known for their design,
for their UI,
their UI. And so this definitely puts Drone in a class of its own. And I think when you look at what Drone and the open source community have done with Drone, it can hold its own against any other CI system on the market, even the companies that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars.
And a lot of open source systems pride themselves on their command line interface, their CLI, right?
Yep.
And quite frankly, so I've been involved in open source for years too. That was always a way for third-party companies to kind of commercialize a bit on open source, is they would make front ends for open source projects, right? There are a lot of companies that did that, and really that was the stepping stone to a real commercial business. Under the covers, it would be an open source project, and then they'd put a really nice front end on it, maybe some extra security or support, and off they went with a business. So when is 2.0 coming out, do you know, if you can say?
Yeah, it's coming out what is now tomorrow, I guess, relative to when this airs. That will be March.
It'll be the week before March. So by the time people watching this, Drone 2.0 is out.
Yes.
You can still get it at drone.io, or?
Yeah, so it'll be available at drone.io, which is our cloud hosted service, and it'll be available for download in the open source. So all the code will be up on GitHub for people to download, try, and even submit patches if they want to help us improve it.
Very cool. Beyond the interface, the UX, any other kind of feature sets that you think are really key for Drone 2.0?
Yeah, we added this really cool feature for remote debugging. One of the biggest challenges you face as a developer is, it works on my machine, but it doesn't work in CI. And, developers lose probably hours a week just trying to figure out why. And so we've added some really cool debugging functionality. You can actually, debug your builds locally inside containers. So you can run, you mentioned the command line earlier. We've got a fantastic command line that lets you run your pipelines on your computer in containers the same way Drone would. So it allows for easy local debugging. But then also when you run your build in your pipeline on Drone server, we can actually allow you to remote in, establish a remote session. You can get right in the servers directly inside those containers. So you can start to poke around from the command line. You can cat files or dig through and try to investigate why your build fails. And so I think that will really take a lot of the toil out of some of the challenges that teams face with CI today.
Very cool. Brad, let me ask you on another piece of this now. So you're 6 months, post-acquisition.
Yep.
Harness has lived up to their word about supporting the open source project. You've got a new version of the open source project. We're seeing, features from Drone make their way into the main Harness product. What about you personally? What your principal engineer, is that the title?
Yes.
So what's your days looking like? What are your days looking like now?
So, I'd say, it's a great question. I mean, I do less or no accounting, no sales, no quotes, no contracts. So
in there, yeah.
I have
That's a nice thing.
An incredible team that's supports the product, which is great. And so that's freed up some time. I still spend a ton of time in the community. So answering questions, providing help. I mean, that's, really important to Drone and its DNA, having a strong community. Sales calls, just helping meeting teams out there using Drone, helping them get up and running. But another big piece is, helping, drive the vision of our CI enterprise. So bringing CI into the Harness platform. So we've got a lot of really interesting, advanced features that we're bringing that are pretty exciting, to the Harness platform.
Very cool.
And
what
specifically,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think one of them I'd love to talk about is, Harness describes itself as, the developer platform for continuous delivery, for software delivery, right? And it focuses, I think, where they're really interesting is they focus on intelligence, right? So they brought intelligence to their continuous delivery process. They can do things like, use algorithms and machine learning to analyze your logs and automatically roll back to the last known working build in real time. I mean, it's really cool stuff. And so we're taking that same level of intelligence and bringing it to continuous integration. So, one of your, my pet peeves as a developer is, my CI pipeline, let's say, takes an hour and it fails after 55 minutes. So I've just wasted 55 minutes of my time, right? Can we intelligently reorder your tests? So tests with a higher probability of failure running first. Can we reorder them? So, right, we know you changed this particular piece of code. Let's test that piece of code first instead of, 55 minutes later. So it's about bringing intelligence to CI, making your pipelines faster, failing faster, so the teams can move faster. So that's something, that I'm involved with, working with that team, and it's really cool.
Excellent, man. Well, listen, I want to wish you the best of luck going forward. Drone 2.0, it sounds exciting. We are, we follow Harness. We follow the whole space pretty closely, but we follow Harness really closely, and we are looking forward to seeing some of the great stuff as we continue. We were talking off camera. I think as we move and put a little of this COVID stuff behind us, God willing, we're going to see the fruits of just all this acceleration that's taken place, all this development that's taken place. And it's going to be some exciting times, and I think Harness will be in the thick of it.
Yes, I agree. I'm going to update my stock portfolio accordingly.
We all should. All right. Hey, we don't give out stock advice, though. Please don't rely on anything we say. You should speak to a professional. Anyway, Brad, thanks for joining us here on TechStrong TV, man. Come back and join us soon again and keep us posted.
All right. Thanks, Alan.
All right. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with another guest in a moment.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, Alan speaks with Philippe Humeau, who is the CEO of CrowdSec, which is a crowdsourced security platform. Philippe and I had a discussion about the technology about a month ago, and Alan furthers his discussion with about the technology, and it offers up a lot more insight. So let's give this conversation a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel, and you're watching another segment on TechStrong TV. My guest for this segment is Philippe Humeau. Philippe is the CEO of CrowdSec. And Philippe, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hello, I'm delighted to be with you.
Delighted to have you here, Philippe. So, you know, this is the first time I believe that we're interviewing anyone from CrowdSec on TechStrong. So I think a good place to start is to introduce the company to our audience. So, Philippe, if you don't mind, give us a little background, maybe a little of your own background as well.
Sure. I decided to start this company like 5 years ago, but it took time because I had lockups. I sold my previous company. So I had to stay for a while and so on and so forth. And couldn't recruit my old pals. But basically, I've been in a pen test background first. I did a lot of pen tests, red team. So a lot of offensive security. And then I did a lot of defensive security on the other side. And trust me, it's way harder. So what we did is like high security environments, but like 10 years ago. So it was kind of a new thing by then. And we sold the company because, you know, a lot of French managed services wanted to have this kind of high security cloud for their customers. So, and then I found, you know, we made just half the way. We could provide the same level of security, but without the hassles, right? Without all the complexity that we had to have in this company. And we could do it through a product. And that's how CrowdSec is born.
Excellent. And you're right. You know, so my background security too, I spent 20 plus years. And one of the companies I co-founded, about 60% of our business was the U.S. DOD. We did Navy, Marines, Army, installations. And again, high security, a lot of certifications and information assurance kind of work that had to go on. And, you know, I think back to what we were thinking and doing 10, 15 years ago versus what's available today. And of course, it's very, very different environments, right? 15 years ago, the DoD wasn't really using cloud. You know, the Army or the Navy and so forth. And we didn't have a lot, you know, the AppSec world wasn't what it is. But when I hear the term CrowdSec, I'm thinking like crowdsourcing, or, you know, that there's an element of that in it. Is that part of the CrowdSec formula? Is crowdsourcing security?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's actually the core of it. That's why we chose the name. And I'm so delighted people like, you know, nail it and understand the sound in it. So the basic thinking we have behind is like, look, we've been spending zillions of dollars in security, right? So if you take like super big banks that are spending hundreds of million dollars a year, they still get hacked. How come? I mean, that's crazy. This is one of the only field in the whole industry where no matter the amount of money you put, you can get beaten up. It's like if you would go to a racetrack with your brand new Lambo and you would get beaten up at the finish line by a Chevy pickup 67. It's just not possible, right? But this is the world of car. In the world of IT, the big budget doesn't make such a big difference because the game is totally asymmetrical. It's totally in favor of the offensive forces. And those guys are teaming together. They are sharing the information. They are structured. They are exchanging things together. And we said, okay, let's do the same thing. Let's gather all the DevOps, all the SecOps, all the sysadmins, and give them a tool that would be some sort of a Waze, but for firewalls. And as soon as they get aggressed, they would share the IP. So not only block the aggression, but share the IP that aggressed them with all the network. So we would all work together as a crowd against these offensive forces.
Love it. I love it. And, so Philippe, let me ask what some may consider a silly question. Why did it take for us to sort of apply sort of a crowdsourced, model to security like this?
Well, what we have now about like the threats is classical CTI, right? The classical CTI goes like this. People spawn 100, 200, 300 machines on a couple of clouds running simulated services, which we call honeypot, right? So they are like, attack me, and they simulate that there are VPN endpoint, like terminal service endpoint, Samba endpoint, HTTP services and stuff, right? And they listen to what's incoming, and they say, okay, this IP is nefarious, this IP is dangerous, and so on. But this is limited compared to what we're doing. What we're doing is like running real services, because this software is protecting real services, real VPN endpoint, real HTTP services, and so on, across all the internet, IPv4, IPv6, no matter the IP range. There are people using the product in Togo, in university, sweatshops in Thailand, individuals in Iceland with fiber connection, 5G, 4G, whatever, you name it. It's impossible to pinpoint us on the map, right? And those are real services, I told you. They are scattered all across the place, and they are not gathered just one range or whatever. So it's infinitely more powerful to have a crowdsourced information than a centrally gathered one. I mean, centrally by like 100, 200 machines. We already are thousands of users, and we are targeting millions. We want to be the next gen fail to ban distributed across the whole network. So we really literally are aiming at million machines. But already if we are 10,000, 20,000, we have the best ever source of information available.
I love it, 100%. Now, Philippe, as we were talking off camera before we started, our audience is some DevOps, some cyber, then some DevSecOps, both, cloud native, people interested in digital transformation. If you can, I'm going to ask you to talk to our developer audience right now, our DevOps audience. How does this help them? How can they leverage this? How could they be involved?
Sure. Well, the first step is using the software. So the software goes as follows. You go on GitHub, it's for free, forever. It's a MIT license. You really don't owe us anything, right? This software will help you protect your stack, whatever it is. It could be like HTTP, could be whatever level and protocol you want. As long as your software are spitting logs, we can analyze those logs and apply the behavior engine on it. And the behavior engine will find patterns, like if someone is failing 5 times its authentication on an FTP, maybe it's trying to guess my password. If someone is doing $0.1 transaction on our website, where usually our web shop is selling like on average $30 cards, is someone trying to credit card stuff and validate credit card numbers. If someone is scanning a lot of close ports, if someone is scanning a lot of URLs and stuff, all of these are behavior we can catch, and we already do, right? And then they can apply a remedy wherever they want. So they can detect at one point and remedy in another point, in another place, on their firewall, in their reverse proxy, directly in their apps, in their payment gateway, wherever they want. So once they did this, they can partake into the network naturally by sharing the IP they blocked. They don't have to. If they don't want to, they don't have to. They can deactivate this feature. But if they want to partake into the network, then they get a second benefit from the network, the global IP reputation database working for them for free. They are sharing with us. They are making us strong. So we are giving them back all this power. And the monetization model is elsewhere. It's where the people don't want to share anything, right? And they are maybe willing to have extra features like handling a lot of machines. Like today, somebody deployed maybe 200 or 300 machines. They don't want to use it one by one. They want to have a global control tower of all of this to be able to, turn on switch, adjust the policies and stuff, right? So this is the way they can already work with us. They have to know that we don't share the logs. We don't capture the logs. Their logs are treated locally. The only thing we export, if they do want to, is behavior, IP, and timestamp. That's all. This is the only thing we export. And then we can do the reputation magic, right? And if they want to go deeper into this and help the global community, they can bring their knowledge at the table, because they are all developers. They are very qualified people. So since it's open source, we are accepting a lot of contribution. It could be new scenarios, to detect some new behavior. Could be new parsers to swallow some new logs that we don't know about yet. Could be a new type of bouncer that, I don't know, will like ring the CEO or the CTO of the company on his phone instead of blocking the IP, whatever they want to do. And all of this will be integrated in the hub and distributed back to the community so they can partake into the development of the software.
Excellent. Sitting here listening to you, Philippe, I'm thinking to myself, this was really like kind of the original premise behind threat research, right? Is you did set up global honeypots and you did gather data from your honeypots, but what made threat research at some of the bigger security vendors work was that they were able to anonymously, right, by anonymizing the data, they were able to use their hundreds or thousands of customers' data, to supplement the information they had in the honeypot to give a better view of what were dangerous IPs, a better view of what packets, what apps, what exe files were malicious, right? What email addresses and so forth. Now the problem is that threat research was this company's threat research and that company's threat research, and we didn't see a lot of the pooling across security vendors. So, if you were a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 500 company, you oftentimes had to subscribe to multiple threat research feeds, threat intel feeds, to get a complete picture. And it sounds almost like CrowdSec is overcoming that by being open like this. But more importantly as well is there's a proactive element to it that, what you get back for putting your anonymous information into the machine is you proactively put in defense. And then it's up to individual companies how proactive they want to be, right? Do I want to block all the IPs you're telling me are bad? Or do I want to just, note them as bad and we'll keep our eye on them kind of thing? So it seems like a very, fair trade, right? Of what you get for what you give.
Absolutely. We have to be fair with the community because, when a company like us doing open source, we will announce shortly, and that's kind of a scoop thing, that we are doing a big fundraiser, right? So when an open source company is doing a fundraiser, the first thing people are thinking, okay, they sold their soul to the devil and they're going to monetize everything. That's not true. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is gather a lot of information, make the community benefit from it for free. But if you're a big bank and you cannot share a single thing or just don't want to, then you can leverage the database anyway. It's not a problem. It's fine by us. And what you said before about those CTI company or maybe other antivirus, whatever, they didn't really naturally share together. They were more competitors, right? And also they were treating a very specific thing. Like, for example, HTTP layer. Akamai is something internally, but it's internal knowledge and it's only on HTTP. Maybe F-Secure has something, maybe McAfee has something, and so on. And they are all within their room. So they share a bit, but it's harder for them because they are competitor in the end, right? But we think at CrowdSec, the only safe way is that DevOps, SecOps, sysadmins join hands together and say, okay, let's do it all together. Because all together, we will outnumber the hackers. will outpower them by a 1 to 1,000 ratio. You use a new IP, we know about it. You have 3,000 IPs, we know them all. And we'll be peeling the onion. And trust me, we won't be the one crying.
Excellent. I don't disagree with you. But let's also be real. This is a venture. How can you monetize this, or how are you planning on monetizing? Right? Because there's ways of monetizing without being a vulture or anything like that. So how and if it's too early, it's fine. Just say it's too early.
Well, no, it's super fine by me, and we're transparent about that. We are real open source companies. Everything you ask, we have to answer because it's a model, right? So the thing is, the monetization goes as follows. Say we have many large customers looking at us, really, really large tier 1 US-based cloud maker, right? Stuff like that. People like that. What they need is like a global centralized way of handling the security policies across thousands, if not tens of thousands of machines. They need to be able to enforce specific stuff at specific time on their bouncers. And that is a premium feature, one of them. The second feature that you get for premium is AI, because in not so long from now, we'll be able to dig into our huge data lake that is growing by the day and see what we call weak signals. Weak signals is like IP A, B, C, and D are aggressive, but they are just slightly under the level of noise where we would deem them as being really, really bad. So they are acting all together, and each of them is doing part of the job, right? So since it's separated in small packages, it would be not offending enough to end up into the reputation database. But the AI will catch this pattern, saying, A, B, C, and D were at this place before, and in this place as well, more or less at the same time, with the same time frame or ratio. Probably A, B, C, and D work together. So you know what, JP Morgan, Citibank, whomever, if you see A coming to your premises, directly block B, C, and D before they even come to you, right? Because they will come to you. We know about it. It's more about this minority report thing, The other feature we'll monetize is like telling you that you are attacking, right? We see your IPs attacking people around. So we'll tell you, you're probably compromised. You should look deeper into your system. We can tell you also if you are the only one being targeted by an attack and not anyone else, which would end up being a targeted attack, which is also a premium feature. And you get cool dashboard for your boss, to present like, look what we folded as attacks this month. Maybe you can give us $50 a month to get better dashboard, better reporting and stuff, and support obviously. So that's pretty much what's inside.
Got it. I love it. Philippe, we didn't tell people where to go on the web to find out and partake and join this. What's the URL?
Well, crowdsec.net, crowdsec.net, and obviously on GitHub we are crowdsecurity/crowdsec. You can just Google in crowdsec, you will find us pretty much everywhere if the PR agency did the good job, right?
What's what you're paying for, right? Hey, they got you on the show here. Anyway, Philippe, we're about out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. I wish you the best of luck with CrowdSec. This is, as a security person, I like what I'm hearing. I like what I'm hearing. It's a good thing. Come back and visit us again. Keep us posted, okay?
Yes, it will be my pleasure.
Excellent. Philippe Humot, CEO, CrowdSec. That's crowdsec.net. Check it out. Sounds really great stuff here. This is Alan. We're going to take a quick break on TechStrong TV, and we're going to be right back with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, we have Andy Ellis with Duha.co. He used to be the Akamai CSO. He and his wife Giselle have launched this new company that is about teaching leadership and raising up the next generation of leaders, and it's something that I think we can all get behind. Alan has a conversation with Alan about Duha, or Alan has a conversation with Andy about Duha, and it's a great one, so let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another TechStrong TV segment. I'm really happy to have a friend of mine, one of the nicest Patriot fans you'll ever meet in the world. It's my friend Andy Ellis. Many of us in the security industry know Andy for years as CSO Andy, or just Andy, or Andy from Akamai. But Andy's here as in a new guise, in a new vessel, if you will, vassal. Let's hear from Andy. Andy, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Alan, thanks for having me. I even put on Boston Bruins colors that you could mistake for being Steelers colors.
For a second, I thought they were. I honestly, I was expecting you in blue, red, and white today. Like, if not a jersey, a hat, something. But it's okay.
I got the Tom Brady shirt right here, just in case.
All right, hold it up. Let's see. We got a T12 7.
Anyway, so
all right, it's all good, but it's a time for change. Exactly. You're no longer Andy at Akamai.
That's right. Yeah, much like Tom, I'm married to Giselle, grew up in California, spent 20 years building a dominant Boston franchise, and now it's on to something new. So
you didn't come to Florida, though.
Have not yet come to Florida.
Okay. There's still hope.
There's still some hope.
Here. You don't want to come here. Anyway, Andy, before we get into Akamai, first of all, what you did at Akamai, I don't think needs any, prep to our crowd. You kind of almost single-handedly instituted the security program there. It was about 20 years ago. And not only instituted it, but actually developed it, evolved it, grew it, ran it for all this time. And now Akamai security business is a billion plus dollar business, right?
Yep.
And kudos to you, and I think our audience is at least somewhat familiar with that. So the question is, what's now? What are we doing now?
So I'm doing a number of things. I'm going to keep my toe in the water. I'm advising a couple of cybersecurity firms, but my real passion has always been developing powerful leaders. The team that I built at Akamai was 94 people. 40% of whom were women, which is, I think, a staggering number for our industry. And we really focus on how do we develop leaders. And across my years, what I discovered is there's a gap. Almost all HR programs and development programs wait until people are senior executives to try to give them leadership development. And let's just be very honest, speaking as a senior executive myself, by the time we've made it, we're not really ready to learn somebody else's style. We think we have a style that works for us. We might be right, we might be wrong, but it's really hard to learn. And leadership, like almost all competencies, is not about doing one thing to perfection. It's about doing a lot of things really well, 1% better than everybody else, and not making what I call sort of lazy mistakes. It's not making those unforced errors that give everything away. And from the inside, that recipe doesn't feel like amazing competence, but from outside, it is noticeable. When you think about the professionals you've worked with in any career field, not just leaders, the ones that you often say, wow, I would always want to go back and work with them, aren't necessarily the deepest and strongest at like one skill. They were the people who you knew you could always rely on. They didn't drop the ball, and they would always just go that little bit extra. And leadership is the same way. So I want to teach people how to be better leaders.
Absolutely. Andy, we got involved in something down here in Florida. We call it Engineer the Change. It's a scholarship fund we started with a local new coding academy opened here called Boca Code. and we're funding 2 full scholarships a year for underrepresented community members, right? And part of it is leadership, right? Because we ask them to prepare an essay and kind of present on how they're going to pay it forward, right? How are they going to be leaders in their community? And you're 100% right. The time to train leaders is not when they're already a leader.
Right. They're already set in stone. They think they've got it.
Yeah, no, they've been there. And especially in the tech industry, Andy, so often we take people who are great individual contributors, right? They're a great developer, they're a great security admin, and say, okay, we're going to build our team around him or her, too often him. And so we take that individual contributor and think that he or she is going to be a great team leader. And it's a different skill set.
It's a very different skill set. And it's almost like the transition from a hunter model to a farming model, right? When you're the individual contributor, you have to do it all. You have to be a superstar. And when you make that person a leader, they're going to look for people just like them. And so you might build this group of hunters. When you have a 94-person team, you don't need everybody to be a unicorn superstar who can do everything. You need people who will be really competent at their discipline. And it's your job as a leader to make that all work. You're building a society. And that's a completely different skill set from running off into the woods and killing whatever beast showed up today.
I agree 100%. I mean, look, my own personal experience, learning to delegate.
Yes.
Right? Trusting your team. Not to harp on football, right? But what does Belichick say? Just do your job.
Do your job.
If you're a leader and you can trust your people to just do their job and let them do it, to me, that I've learned that's the key to winning, right? Don't try to do their job.
Yeah, and that's an example of one leadership skill, which is knowing how good people are, giving them the challenges that will grow them, and staying out of their way, but supporting them when needed. Yeah. And the challenge is when people do leadership training, they think it's like, get into a room with 3 hours with 30 of your least favorite colleagues, or maybe your most favorite ones, and you'll come out of it like indoctrinated into how to do leadership. When the answer is, it's like every day you need to practice a new skill and say, how do I listen? How do I invest more into my people? And so that's what our company, which is Duha, is aimed at doing. So Duha.
So it's DUHA.co.
.co, not .com.
Good.
So Duha means rainbow in Slovak, because Giselle, my wife, is half Slovak. And so she's my business partner because she actually comes out of an education background. She also has a degree from MIT. Worked in education from early education all the way up into college level education, the Museum of Science, the Edgerton Center. And our goal is to disrupt the education model around professional education for leadership. We're going to deliver 1-minute videos with one clear action item, and that's one lesson. The idea is you get that once a week. Here's the thing to go practice. So if your listeners today, I'll give them a quick 1-minute video on how to do this. Let's just think about giving people feedback. There's a common model called EEC, which is evidence, effect, change. It says, what evidence do you have that somebody did something? What was the effect that had on the environment? And what would you like them to change? The problem with that is it's a management style, not a leadership style. It's a management style because it focuses on the change, right? You're telling somebody what to do differently. And what happens is most people experience that as what we call fetch a rock. You tell them to bring you a rock. When they bring you a rock, you say, that's not the rock I was looking for. And you tell them to change something to a different way. Leadership is actually about that experience. It's about showing people how to change themselves. And so when you're a good leader, you often talk about, here's what you did and here's how it affected the world. You wait for them to ask you for suggestions on change, but you recognize that they're going to guide their own change. And if they're so busy arguing with you about the change that you want, they're not going to internalize the experience that the rest of the world is having with them. And it's your job as a leader to teach them about the effect they're having on the world, not to tell them what to go change. Because you're going to tell them to change yourself, how you would do it. And they're a completely different individual than you. So your 1-minute action would be to go practice that. Find a place that you would give feedback to somebody and not tell them what to change. Instead, stop after you tell them how they're affecting the world, because you want them to change the effect. And only suggest a change if they ask for one.
Love it. So there you got your free first 1 minute lesson right here from Duha. Andy, will these be like a library available on duha.co, or?
So we're delivering it through, right now we're in a closed content beta where we're developing the content and having a stream of them. We're going to launch as a public beta, probably on the Teachable platform. So it'll be available as if it were a course. You would subscribe, and then once a week, a course gets open to you. So you'll be able to go back and look at any course you've taken. Our goal for full product launch would be app-based delivery, where you'd have an app that you could also say things like, hey, I just became a manager, so front load all of the ones very focused on management. Or I'm about to have to go hire somebody, front load everything about hiring right now, so that you could sort of have some input into the order that's coming in. That's obviously our plan for the GA launch. But right now we're in the content beta where we're really focused on making sure we have the right content to get people started.
Sounds great. It is exciting. I'll tell you another, not hurdle, but a lesson I had to learn probably the hard way, Andy, was moving from managing one team of people, so everyone under you is relatively flat, right? And they're all equal. Not that people are unequal, everyone's equal, but you know what I mean? From an organizational point of view, you have one level of people under you, to more of a three-dimensional organization where there are layers, right? Where I tended to really identify with the people, sort of direct reports, if you will, right? And then working with the people 1 and 2 layers below that, right? You don't want to rock the boat of that relationship between their immediate supervisor and them, though you're here. And so, navigating that three-dimensional grid, if you will, of team building and of team leadership is, I think that's a skill that is learned. I've come to
that's
come
absolutely
to learn.
learned. I don't think there's anybody who does that naturally. I think everybody who does it well learned how to do it and made mistakes.
Absolutely.
A lot of what I'm teaching are mistakes that I made along the way that I would really hope other people don't have to repeat them. Or if they do repeat them, learn much more quickly than I did.
Absolutely. Andy, if you don't mind, our audience wants to know. I think I do know, but I'm going to let you say. So after 20 years at Akamai, what made you feel it was time for a change?
Well, I think every business just reaches points where, the business is going in one direction and somebody's career arc is going to go in another direction. And so, that's a time where, gracefully you say, hey, that's the right time. Let's go do something else.
Very cool. And then, modestly you said, well, I'm advising a couple of cybersecurity startups, right?
Yep.
Some of them are, they're startups, but they're a little further down the road than just raw startups. They're companies that have raised significant venture capital. It's a good time for you to give a plug. What are some of the, if you're comfortable, what are some of the companies you're advising?
Absolutely. So there's Vulcan Cyber, and I'm going to put Vulcan first.
They just raised 21.
I think it was 21. I'd have to look at the number. So you need.
I think it's 21 and a Series B. Yes.
Series B. And I'm really excited about what Vulcan's doing. Vulnerability remediation orchestration, which
something
is really
near and dear to my heart as well.
Very, very much. Like how do you just make sure you're patching everything in the right order across your whole business, and you just don't forget things? Because that's the real problem in most patch management is you get the high priority stuff and then you forget everything else and you don't know, oh, look, if all I did was upgrade that system, I'd get a bunch of stuff out of it. So I love what Vulcan's doing. Orca Security is also one I advise. Love them too. Also just had a Series B a little while ago.
Yes, they did.
And Orca is fantastic for those of you who are doing anything in public cloud. Like Orca, literally turning it on is a couple of minutes. And what it does is it's agentless based side scanning. So basically comes in and looks at the snapshots that are being taken in your public cloud environment and runs a full security stack against the snapshots. So it's like having an entire enterprise security stack that runs passively on the back end of your infrastructure, has no performance impact, and gives you like this complete model of here's what's broken and here's what you need to fix with priority. A challenge that a lot of vulnerability detection kits have is they only look at a system. But if you had a firewall in front of a vulnerability, it's not as important as if you don't. And Orca sees both of those and says, oh, yeah, you have a problem here, but there's 5 remediations that make that not impact you, so it's not the high priority. Let's tell you the 20 things you need to fix instead of this laundry list of 10,000 defects. You can still go orchestrate and fix all of those. Also advising Upticks, which is a local company here to Boston, actually an Akamai spinoff, that was taking OS query at scale. So giving telemetry and visibility across your entire enterprise from laptops to servers built on top of OS query.
So I think I've interviewed all 3 of these companies. Orca does a ton of activity with us. Good companies, all really good companies. So, and I'm sure they'll benefit greatly from your guidance and
I'm
advice.
so excited
Andy.
for them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, look, it's an exciting time right now. We're coming off this calamity of which is COVID, right? And God knows there's enough heartache to go around, economically as well as, physically with people. But it's also a very exciting time. I almost feel like we do this DevOps experience show at virtual event every year. So we're thinking of the name for the coming year. I'm going to call it the Roaring 20s because I think
love it.
I think this COVID thing has set us up for a roaring 20s in tech where we're just going to see so much change, so much progress, so much, new ways of doing things better, faster, cheaper. That's going to change. It's going to change the way we live. It's going to change. It's really going to be, not that it's not important now, but it's going to be much more important.
No, I completely agree. And I look at, starting a company right now, I had some family friends who were like, are you crazy? Why are you doing this?
This is the best time.
I just spent the last year learning how to do a whole bunch of these things around remote work, around video conferencing. Like I've got a full video setup to do this. And with cloud services and how easy it is to set things up, like we're not going to build a 1,000-person company. That's not our goal. Our goal is to change the world as cheaply as possible. Because while I would love for executives to take my courses, our courses are really aimed at the junior professionals. Everybody should gain benefit, but ultimately I want it to be that the day that you start in the workforce, that the first subscription you buy and it will last your entire career is Duha. And it's going to take you from not knowing how to interact in the workforce all the way to how to be a CEO. And I got to make it affordable.
I think it's a great idea. I love it, Andy. I love it. Good stuff. So I know you said public beta and then on this teaching platform. Time frames, any?
So we're aiming for early summer. You should take that with obviously the grain of salt of every startup, but we're pretty optimistic that, hopefully before July 4th, we'll be able to be into our public beta on teachable.com.
Very cool. That is fantastic. Hey, man, Andy, it's a pleasure to have you on. It's a pleasure to hear what you're doing. It's exciting. I'm jazzed hearing it. Best of luck with it. If there's anything we could do, we're here to help. You've helped so many people over the years that I personally know in security. So it's all good, right? It's time. It's a good thing.
I really appreciate the love and support, and we'll see you later.
We absolutely will, and we'll talk football soon, right? The draft will be here July. Well, we'll talk. All right. Andy Ellis of Duha, and that is duha.co. So it's DUHA, right? There it is. Yep. .co, not .com. And sign up for the beta as soon as you can. Learn from a real leader, Andy Ellis, on how to be a leader. This is Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with our next guest.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts, this is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, we have the Haunted Hacker podcast. In this episode, Mike Jones speaks with Craig Ford, who is the senior security architect at BIDOM Solutions. He's also a well-known cybersecurity author, and a guy all the way around. It's a great conversation, so let's give it a listen.
So tonight we have Craig Ford, who is an author and a cybersecurity expert, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't wait.
Craig does so many things.
Right. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Craig. To get started, I don't have a whole lot of news this week other than the fact that I had a conversation with Rangeforce. Rangeforce is going to provide the cyber range for what will soon be an esports league for hackers. The idea was kind of born, I guess it was like a year ago when I was in the UK and thought about having like an esports league like the gamers have. They make a lot of money, they get sponsorships, they have teams, and it's a lot of fun for everybody. This way, we can get people jump-started into careers, and, the people with really good defense and red teaming skills will shine and kind of stick out, and it'd be a good place for recruiting and moving into the industry. Other than that, no changes on the political front. The U.S. is still a mess. Big surprise there. Our president seems to stumble and trip upstairs, which is unique. I've never seen a president do that before. But I guess that's a superpower I don't possess. Anyways, so let's get started. Craig, it's awesome to have you on. I'm so glad you were able to make it. Sorry for the late start. I guess the time change kind of messing people up. So I'm sure we'll have some stragglers. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for inviting me anyway. It's definitely a pleasure to talk to you guys. And so just about me in general, cybersecurity architect by day, cybersecurity, now a fantasy author outside of that. Been in sort of a IT kind of a role back in early 2000s, somewhere like that, and made my way slowly towards cybersecurity. When I sort of got that bug around, I think it was around 2013, I started pushing that cybersecurity direction, and pretty much loved it ever since and been pushing that way the whole time. Yeah, it's a great industry. I think we have some problems, but every industry does, I think. But yeah, it's definitely good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a little bit of digging into your series of books. Tell us a little bit about your books and what your goal is with those 2 books you have.
So the first 2 books, basically it's a Hacker IM series. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek name. Same with if you have a look at the cover itself, it's a bit of I've always had a bit of an issue with the media's depiction of hackers and, always the bad guys and that sort of thing. So that was kind of part of the cover idea and the name itself, to have a bit of a tongue-in-cheek poke at that. But the idea with the books was, when I was sort of trying to get into security, no one was really talking about it. No one was really sharing any of the information and that sort of stuff, and making it easy for outsiders to understand a little bit about it and for people wanting to come into the industry. So I kind of wrote the series in as non-technical way as you could probably do it, and tried to make it so it was something that everyone would enjoy. I used sort of stories and, I think there's about 50 chapters in each of the books, all different topics across the cybersecurity, from your IoT to your autonomous vehicles, you name it. I've pretty much tried to do as non-technical coverage as possible. And I like to use sort of your random stories. I go down a bit of a rabbit hole and try and make a journey out of it, so you can have a bit of fun and learn at the same time.
Well, what's your favorite chapter?
What was that, sorry?
What's one of your favorite chapters in your book?
I think my favorite one is the one that I named the book after, The Hacker I Am. I have a bit of a sort of a storytelling of what it would be like for a hacker to be, trying to break into a system and that sort of stuff, and sort of make it a fun journey and do that poker fun at the media depiction, sort of saying it's just a normal guy and ends up being just a security guy just trying to protect a system. But that's probably my favorite out of all of them. And I've got a few. I think there was an assassination story that I said for someone with a medical IoT device. I had a bit of a story with that, a bit of a short story. I had a bit of fun in quite a few of them. It's definitely different when you're talking about a cybersecurity book. It's not your normal style. And the other weird thing is you can actually literally pick up the book and choose any chapter you want. You don't have to read it in order. Just pick a topic you like the idea of and just read that.
That's awesome. So what drove you to write a book? I've been toying with the idea, but writing a book is so intimidating, I think. Yeah, daunting and intimidating. And I'm afraid if I start that I'm just going to get lost in the process. So tell me what went through your head when you were deciding to or not to write a book, and what it was like going through the process.
I think with the deciding the book part was a little bit easier because I'd already been doing some cybersecurity journalist stuff, like writing sort of similar content for CSO for a little while. And a few of my colleagues said, look, we really like your stuff. You should make a book in the same sort of style of writing. And I'm like, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I was ever going to write articles or books or anything, I would have just laughed at you and said, that's not going to happen.
Exactly.
But people were enjoying it, and I thought, that's my way of sort of sharing it. But I think the easiest way with the book was I took it in small pieces. I just went, I'm just going to write the chapter at a time, go through it piece by piece, and then just put it together slowly like that. And I think my book made it a little bit easier because it is individual topics, so it wasn't one big component. My new book, the fantasy, is a little bit different because it is one full story, which was a bit more challenging to do. But the two cybersecurity awareness sort of style ones, were much easier with those individual little chapters. You just chunk by chunk, and it wasn't too scary that way. But I think probably the scariest part was whether people would actually want to read it once I wrote it. I was like sitting there going, oh, am I putting this all together? Is it all this hard work and no one's even going to want to read it? But turns out it was people like it, so that's good.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, I saw it on Amazon. Actually selling for like $30 US on Amazon. Book one is. I think it's really interesting to take that experience and the knowledge you've gained inside of cybersecurity and kind of give it back in that way. And the storytelling part of it is really cool, right? So a lot of the tech and the hacking books and stuff like that, it's all very technical. It's all very black and white, and it's all very ones and zeros. So you can't really read it from cover to cover, which I think kind of does a disservice to both the author and the crowd that it generates attraction to. But with the story approach, I think Kevin Mitnick had a book, something similar, where he told stories about stuff that happened, Ghost on the Wire, and kind of put it into a story perspective. And I find that more approachable and digestible than these big penguin published thick manuals that take 6 months to even get through. So that's really refreshing. I think it's really cool. Did you go through a publisher to do it? Did you publish it yourself?
I had a bit of a chat to with a few of the normal sort of publishing houses, but I ended up going the sort of indie publishing, the self-publishing route, only for the fact that they wanted to try and change that path that I wanted to go down. Oh yeah. And it sort of, I didn't really like that idea. I wanted to just stick to that general idea and do it as the way I wanted to do it with those sort of stories. They wanted to make it one long book, and like you said, I think they're a bit dry and a bit hard to get through sometimes, those sort of books. And I wanted to make it a bit more fun, a bit more easy. So I did the self-publishing.
Yeah. Are you do you have any plans on writing a book about maybe cyber law, or even like a children's book strictly for children about like internet safety or stuff like that? Has that crossed your mind about the series of books, or what are your thoughts?
It's not something I've thought of. I've seen a few of the like sort of your children books one. I think they're great. And I definitely think it's a good idea. It's probably not my style of thing, but I wouldn't say no if that was something that sort of went down that path. But definitely not a consideration. I've had the more serious like your cyber law stuff, probably not my cup of tea for sure. I'm a bit more of a, I don't know, like to have a bit more fun with it than I think they'd be a bit too dry for my liking. But you never know.
Yeah, I think one of the dilemmas that I'm trying to solve, the equation I'm trying to solve, is the fact that, especially in the UK and other countries, the kids aren't really getting instruction on what the law really is, what's legal, what's illegal. And I was, just looking at the way that you wrote the book and the stories and stuff, I thought, it might be a good vehicle to get the CMA and other laws like that broken down into a digestible format for the kids to read. And those events will stick out in their head more than a teacher telling them about CMA or what's illegal or illegal. So I think it's really cool. I've seen a lot of guys go into being an author from cybersecurity. A buddy of mine named Robert Hansen did a few books. I'm sure Chris Roberts has his hands in quite a few. So I think it's a really cool way to give back. I haven't gone that route yet. I'm still kind of debating on if that's something I'm going to do, but I find it really intriguing. I find that, working on something like that, it seems to be really neat and really cool. I'm just, I know there's got to be a monotonous, mundane, grueling part of it somewhere hidden beneath all the leaves somewhere. So anyways, what brought you into cybersecurity? So tell us about your journey from like school age into the industry. What other occupations did you toss around going into, and kind of what was the mindset of going into something IT or cyber?
I think sort of what I was originally tossing up, I wanted to either be a chef or a mechanic. It's a bit of a weird combination, but I sort of love the cooking, doing that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. The only thing I didn't like was the working when everyone else is having a good time. That didn't seem great to me when I was 18, 19. So and the mechanic side of things, my father was a mechanic, so he basically warned me off it. Although I like cars, he said all you'll do is spend the rest of your life with skin off your knuckles. So he said try and find something else to do. And to be honest, the IT technical side of thing, I just sort of fell in it. I was just always a bit of a natural, always a tinker with the electronic stuff, and always love anything electronic. So it was just a bit of a natural, an opportunity come up, and I just took it, and never stopped basically. Well, it's back in, I think it was around 2000 or 2001 or something I started out, and it's seems like a long time ago now, but
it does. It makes sense though, to go from wanting to be a mechanic to wanting to be in IT. I mean, basically we're doing the same thing, just without all the oil and grunge and stuff like that. Although the fan dust from the motherboard can get pretty bad on allergies sometimes. Other than that, like, do you involve yourself with any like capture the flags or any kind of like online gaming, or what's your personal life look like? What's your passion other than writing and doing what you do career wise?
Bit of a movie buff. I don't get into too much of your capture your flag sort of stuff. I generally, apart from the writing, I stick away from the computers. I think work stuff during the day, you kind of just leave it over it, not going near any of that. But bit of a movie fan. I love the sort of your sci-fi or your actiony kind of stuff.
Cool.
Did you watch the latest Justice League?
I haven't yet, but I want to. I reckon it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, like Mandalorian. I think that's about as
that's a great series
and tech as I get is The Mandalorian.
It's on my list. I haven't started it yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, you definitely want to put that on the top of your list and make sure you watch the second season because, it's fantastic.
Gets better.
Yeah, a lot better. Tell us what like your position you're in at work and kind of your day-to-day routine, if you will, for people who might not know what that position entails and looking at different opportunities within the cyber community. Kind of give us a rundown of what your day looks like and, the type of duties you may carry out.
I think it's a bit of I suppose you would say a jack of all trades kind of security position. I do a little bit from your consulting stuff with sort of clients and advising them and discussing what they've got and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I do a bit of incident response and these days a lot of paperwork. I don't know if it's they've seen my writing and think I'm really good at the writing stuff these days. So it's a bit of the mundane side. I do a lot of like procedures and that sort of stuff.
Right.
But somebody's got to do them, so it might as well be me, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it generally sort of everyday kind of sort of thing is mostly your consulting. I do probably 3 or 4 on-site consulting stuff a week at least in most times, and your basic incident response, which is not as exciting as it sounds most of the time. A lot of it's just log reviews and event reviews, but it sounds pretty exciting, but it's not really most of the time.
Right.
What are some of the pain points? What are some of like the pain points that you run across when you're dealing with all these different customers in the industry? What are they struggling with when it comes to cybersecurity?
I think from the conversations I have, most of them, it's the biggest issues is probably the understanding and knowing what they can do. And because I deal a lot with that sort of in my sort of past up until now, sort of that small to medium enterprise sort of size. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them just don't understand exactly what they can do. And so a lot of the time it's just little things they can do to just improve things, like with your multi-factor authentication, just awareness with their staff, talking about it more and making it a bit more of an open culture in a lot of those places where, you know, if you click on something you shouldn't do or you open something you shouldn't do, just go talk about it and don't be too concerned about having those discussions with your organization or your managers and stuff. I think the culture is probably a definite pain point I think they have, and people are working on it, and I think it's getting better. But yeah, I think people focus a lot of the time a little bit too much on the flashy technology and don't focus on that sort of basic stuff and their stuff. And yeah, I think things would be a lot easier if they just go back to that sort of basic level.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I've heard it so many times when, you know, I talk to different customers. It's everyone's talking about the latest technology, the latest jargon and acronyms. But surprisingly, what I hear from a lot of security professionals is that it's always about the basics. Mm-hmm. So it's so interesting that so many companies are struggling with just the foundation, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's probably, I don't know if it's the marketing or the media from the big vendors and stuff like that. They're pushing you need these big silver bullet solutions, which we all know there is no silver bullet. But yeah, I think if we try and change that conversation as much as we can and make it more about those basics, I think everyone's going to be more secure, and our lives will be easier too, I think. But it's a bit of a challenge, but I think, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, I think, is the basics. That, and for companies to actually like develop some sort of people skills, because they're so used to treating people like employees and not like people, and not creating like that next level interaction or relationship with their people. You know, it can drag a whole unit down. I remember working in security and oil and gas, and you know, walking into a different group or a different part of the cubicle farm, and the looks on people's faces when they see you coming, it's like the Imperial Death March on Star Wars. You know, you can hear it in the background, and people are starting to run different directions because they never want to talk to security. You know, when security comes, it means more work or you've done something wrong. But I think part of it, like you said, is a culture. And when I started with the last company I was with, I would go and, you know, talk to everybody in every group every morning, just say hello and kind of create that bridge. But yeah, you're right. When you walk into companies, you can definitely tell the delineation between IT and security. And it doesn't seem to stop as long as I've been in the industry, and it's been a really long time. But yeah, like I think there's a lot of negative connotation that goes along with security and some of the operations that we do to help keep people safe, like the phishing campaigns. I actually had a boss that wanted to buy one of those Billy Bass, the singing fish that they have like at Walmart or whatever. I wanted to buy one of those, and when people failed the phishing campaigns, put those on their desk. And I thought, how rude, you know, like what is that accomplishing, you know, other than telling all their peers that they completely failed the phishing campaign. So I try to look at it from a positive standpoint, and instead of highlighting numbers, maybe highlight the complexity of the test and stuff like that. Because common sense says that people are going to be the weakest link no matter what. In phishing campaigns, we know that at least 75% of the people are going to fail. That's just, over the years, I've never seen anything below 75%. So that's pretty bad. So when you're giving like consultation and advice on architecture, security architecture, how many times have you been asked about AI or ML in the past year? Because I know that for me, when I hear artificial intelligence and machine learning, it really just makes me cringe. It gives me that tingle down my spine. I don't even want to be involved in a conversation because I think a lot of our industry has been kind of poisoned by the idea of relying on artificial intelligence or machine learning. So what's your thought on that as far as AI and ML go?
It is definitely the new buzz thing, isn't it? Like everyone's talking about it. That's what everyone wants. And I'm with you. Yes, it may be long term. Once it gets a little bit better, it might help us. But I think it's they need to stop trying to go down that the river of the AI and ML and sort of, like we said before, that just focus on the basics. Stop trying to follow these fancy little buzzwords that everyone's trying to sell them at the time, and do the real things that they need to do. And it irks me a little bit the same. Like it's the conversation, everyone wants it. Everyone thinks that's their cure and their solution. But I think maybe long term it might be a good component to have part of. But definitely not the silver bullet that's going to save them all that they think it is. But I think and. Technically speaking, the AI is not real AI anyway. It's all pretty much machine learning anyway. So, exactly. That's a generic other stereotype conversation that they all sort of been sold on. So, but definitely not a thing that I love so much. But I agree with you. It's an irk.
A lot of people don't even know what hides behind the AI engines most of the time, and really that's Bayes' algorithm. And Bayes' algorithm is based on behavior and predictive analysis. But the whole downfall, and I try to explain this to people, is when you're taking a gauge on predictable behavior and past historical behavior, if the network is already hosed, guess what you have? You have a hosed AI engine, because all it's doing is looking at the previous traffic going, oh, that looks great. It's here before, so it must be acceptable. So I think that's the number one issue with AI. I can see AI becoming more acceptable and maybe more advanced and actually doing AI functions if people rip out their entire network and start out with AI or machine learning from the ground up. With the current status of how people are trying to roll out AI, they're just rolling it out on top of. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. It just has a flashy interface on it. So, people in AI
that. That's a good statement.
It's true. So, I mean, people spend tons of money on these AI platforms, and really it's just, once it rains and all the lipstick is washed away, you're still left with a pig. So anyways, what do you see from your point of view? What do you see as being the biggest challenge for 2021 post-pandemic?
I think post-pandemic, we'll be cleaning up all of those rush implementations of getting everyone working from home. I think that's probably going to be a hangover we're going to have for at least 12 months, maybe longer. With the organizations I've been involved with, they're starting to get them to go back and clean up some of those configurations and tidy things up. But I think, that's definitely going to be a huge hangover for a while. And I think we're just kind of going to have to dig in and clean up what we can and fix what we can and make adaptations for what we can't fix that has been put in wrong, and just do our best, I guess. But definitely a horrible hangover for at least 12 months, I think.
Exactly. And one of the things that attracted me to your profile, and I've been watching your profile for quite a while before I actually come onto the show, you're one of the few guys, one of the few experts that I see in their profile that notates the fact that they look at things from an optimistic viewpoint. And that is not always the case in our industry, especially in security. It seems to be a lot of people like me who look at the pessimistic side because I guess we've been in too long, or other people who look at the doom and gloom because that produces revenue, right? But I really respect that. When I read that on your profile, I thought, first of all, that's bold. I can definitely respect that. And then secondly, it's the right attitude to have, because if you walk into a building or a company with the idea of helping them out, and you see the mess that they've created, sometimes it's hard to stay positive. But the fact that you look at everything from a positive aspect, like I want to model myself after that because I fail at that so bad sometimes. What about you, Tremi?
I always try to be optimistic. Yeah, it takes a lot to ruin my day.
Tremi always has a smile on her face. I, on the other hand, take things a little bit too personal, and I get stressed out over ridiculous stuff. But I've seen it a million times in the industry, and it's like, after a while it gets frustrating. It's like, why can't we work as an industry and like really kill these issues? But yeah, I mean, when you get people that are in it for money and not for the passion, you're going to have those problems. So
yeah, I usually find that like when people are stressed out or is when like, like I kick in and the cheerleader comes out and I'm just like, all right, guys, we can do this, teamwork. But usually when everyone's fine is when I start falling apart.
Yeah, well, that's your break. And that's okay. I mean, those things happen, especially in our industry. It's pretty common. So where do you see yourself, Craig, in, let's say, 5 years from now? Do you see yourself continuing to be an author and maybe, expanding on that and maybe trying to hit some like really thick novels, big projects? Or is that something that, you're going to keep the rate you're going and just kind of throw that into your whole huge portfolio of stuff you do?
I think probably 5 years time, I think I definitely think I still will keep writing. It's probably always going to be my bit of a side project, unless something crazy happens and people love it and I don't need to do the other stuff anymore. But I still really enjoy the security side of things. So I think it's going to always be a big part of it unless I don't have time to do it anymore. But at this stage, I think, definitely security and probably more blue team instead of the red team like I've sort of sat in before now. I am enjoying the challenge of being on the inside and sort of trying to help fix those sort of problems instead of trying to break them. But I think it's a bit of a switch of the sides and I quite enjoy that. But so probably somewhere on the blue team. I'm not entirely sure exactly where that will be at this stage, but yeah, definitely blue team side, I think. But with the writing wise, I've sort of doubled down a bit. I'm doing some more like sort of a standard column. I'm doing one with the Women in Security magazine. I'm contributing to that on their bi-monthly sort of magazine. And books wise, I think the Hacker IM, as long as I can think of topics, I think I'm going to keep putting them together, and I think there'll be more of them coming out. You have your volume 3 up to whatever that ends up being. I like the naming convention because it's volume 2, volume 3. It just keeps going nice and easy. I don't have to keep thinking of names. It's perfect for me. But the current book I'm working on now, which is actually a hacker fantasy or cyberpunk, I think is the official term they use for him, is probably a new bit of a line I'm sort of going down. I always sort of, since I started doing the writing and the first book was a little bit of excess, I liked the idea of doing a novel, and I thought, why not just give it a go, see how it goes. So I'm actually just putting finishing touches on it. It should be out next month, fingers crossed.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's the writing challenge for that though. I definitely have to say was much harder. I found it a lot more of a challenge to try and put that full one story together. But yeah, I think writing is going to be something I'm going to stick with for a little while. And I'm quite enjoying it.
What was the inspiration for your female character lead?
It was probably a little bit of my involvement with the Women in Security magazine, and I just think that having a female lead will encourage that sort of people to think outside the box and think, this is normal, like the same as the depiction of the hacker in the hoodie. I love your logo, by the way. I think that's cool. But I generally have a dig at that whole media perception. Yeah. And I wanted to make the whole story behind the character and say, look, what you think is a hacker and what you think is what they should look like and who they are is completely wrong. And get people to think outside that box, and hopefully it works, and hopefully people enjoy the story. It was a little bit of a challenge to try and put myself as a guy in a female character.
Yeah, exactly. That's why
cool, it was different.
Yeah. Do you have any friends in security that are women that you kind of talk to just to kind of as you develop this character?
Yes, definitely. Quite a few colleagues and stuff that I talk to all the time, and sort of try and because as a security person myself, I like to try and see everyone else's perspectives, male, female, different cultures and backgrounds. I think that's, security-wise, I think that's our best path forward to figure out the problems and do that sort of right path forward. So yeah, I have a chat to pretty much everybody, trying to get their sort of mind and what they're thinking of and how they see things. And yeah, it's a challenge sometimes to get that mindset. And I think sometimes I push the edge of whether I get it right or not, but we'll see.
What do you do to get in that mindset? You know, like I can just picture you like putting on a wig and a robe and like, okay.
Nothing as weird as that. No, it's just, to be honest, I most of the time I don't even think about it. I just write with the idea of the hacker part, not the male, female character. And then as I guy sounding, I guess you would say, but yeah, I think I've got it right, but we'll see.
That's really
nice.
cool.
I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I think being an author, I have a lot of respect for people who can write. Like, I've written like little articles here and there, but the whole idea of a book, like I put people that write books like on a completely different level.
Yeah.
Because for me to keep a thought going on the same train track for that long would take some real discipline and some real work. Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned something about the media and the media's view of hackers, so on social media, especially LinkedIn, I've been friends with Chris Roberts for ages. He was one of the first people.
Chris, he's cool. Yeah.
He's awesome. He's great people. Yeah. He's one of the first people I shared a stage with. He came to Charlotte, North Carolina to speak to Bank of America about future vulnerabilities and trends. This was post, I think, airplane issue. But we talked and you know, he's always been a big advocate for changing the way the media looks at hackers and the whole hoodie aspect. And so at first I felt kind of bad because I kind of instigate that attitude or that look, I guess. But I've been so comfortable in a hoodie since I was like, I think there's a picture of me at 3 years old with a hoodie on. So it's something I've always lived in. But so here's the deal. I totally agree with the way that the media portrays hackers is probably not the best. And I think that a movie or a TV show that went a little bit too far, I think, in the negative connotation of the word hacker, which they also did a fantastic technical job, was Mr. Robot. I think they portrayed him horribly as an individual and as a hacker. You know, of course, the hoodie, then they tacked on the drug use and the mental issues. And it's like, can they make him look any worse than he already does? You know? You know, but they did do a service to the industry by actually having like real hacks. And we've done a couple of the hacks here on the podcast live to show people that, you know, it does work. It's legit. They did a really good job there. But for most people in the industry and people coming in, I always tell them, look, you know, yeah, the media does do a bad job at defining what a hacker is. And if you look in Webster's dictionary, it's a mix, right? So you have one entry that says that, you know, they do bad things and compromise systems, but on the other entry, it talks about innovation and developing ideas, which are both very accurate. But I do think we need a better image. But I want people to be who they are. And that's the biggest thing for me. Like, we were around probably way before the industry actually existed. When I got into the industry, there was no such thing as like ethical hacking. So to throw away the hoodie and give that up forever, I don't think I could do it. So other than that, what do you think about the media's coverage? Since we're on the media, what do you think about the media's coverage of SolarWinds and how much of it do you think they've actually disclosed and how much of it do you think they're actually probably not able to disclose or not willing to disclose at this point?
I think with that particular incident and probably many others, they usually blow it out of proportion a little bit, make it a little bit more of a Hollywood style, let's make some money, let's make this a big sort of scare tactic, because that's normally the style they go. I think they probably, most of what they're saying is probably all they know. They probably don't know a lot of the details, which isn't surprising. And they They probably make up some stuff as well, but we won't get into that. But yeah, I think that's kind of standard. They like to sell the big event, the big incident, the big problem, and don't really look at what the real incident is, because probably the real incident is probably not as exciting as they're making it out anyway.
Right.
It's probably a really bad breach, and it's probably a bad incident. I think there's failures probably from a lot of people that have caused it, but I think they need to. No system is secure these days. I think they just got to live with the fact that everything's unsecure, and we're just here to make it as good as we can, make it as secure as we can. But yeah, I think it's all about the airtime for them. They just selling the story, making it as entertaining as possible, and the general public love it. They love to hear it, and they eat it up when they do sell it. So yeah, it's just the way it is.
That's another thing the media does a really bad job at, is actually explaining things on a technical level and dumbing it down so people understand. I think with SolarWinds, a lot of the impact was lost because the normal citizen, everyday citizen, probably didn't grasp 95% of what was being said. But also with the government, we're not going to know all the government systems that hit or to the impact. But doing DoD testing, government testing, like pen testing, red teaming, what I found out is that it's hard to glamorize some of the compromises that the U.S. in specific goes through, because how glamorous is it when someone has like using a default password on a government system? It's really hard to make that look, media worthy and movie worthy, but it's truth. I mean, that's, it's not hard for these big attacks to take place. All it takes is, one decent vulnerability that nobody patches for, and tell me why a government is using open source patching, downloading open source code into, systems like that.
Seems like a bad idea, doesn't it? Yeah. Just straight up.
Yeah, just common sense.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up is our segment, the Something Old segment. This one comes from the Predict 2021 Virtual Summit. Stu Miniman with Red Hat discusses 5 Kubernetes trends for 2021. Very, very insightful, very, very illuminating. Let's give it a listen.
Hi, I'm Stu Miniman, and I'm the Director of Market Insights with the Red Hat Cloud Platforms team. I'm going to talk about some trends in Kubernetes, but give you a little bit of background on myself. So I am relatively new to Red Hat, but I've been in this space for a really long time. Before I joined Red Hat at the end of 2020, I had been an analyst and host of a video program called theCUBE. Maybe you've seen it. We traveled to all of the industry conferences back when traveling was a thing. I'd done thousands of interviews, and I have a heavy infrastructure background, but have been in the cloud space for a long time. Watched the rise and changes in OpenStack, and that led to everything happening with Docker and Kubernetes. I've been at the KubeCon show for many years, and so therefore it gives me an interesting viewpoint to be able to talk about where we are in the trends that are going. So really excited to be able to talk to you about this and the insights I've learned from talking to lots of customers in my job. That's one of the things I love doing, is talking to customers, helping them understand how they're modernizing. And of course, Kubernetes has been an important piece of that topic for a number of years. So let me set a little bit of context for what we're talking about here before we dig into the Kubernetes piece. So we want to talk about really the cloud strategies that companies have and how hybrid fits. So, as I said, I've been in this a long time. When I think back, most of you, when you hear the word hybrid cloud, you're probably thinking about what the picture on the left side of the screen is. We talked about private clouds and public clouds. There were lots of arguing for years as to were there any real clouds other than the public cloud. What could private cloud do for you? And hybrid usually talked about we were trying to spread or stretch or burst applications themselves from one place to another. And that really didn't match with what we saw in the industry, what companies were actually doing. Absolutely, we have our data centers. We have things we're doing in the public cloud. Oftentimes, we're using more than one public cloud, but typically an application, or at least a piece of an application, starts in one place, stays in one place. But what I end up over time is I have lots of environments. So I have, as I said, my data centers hosted environment. Public clouds oftentimes will use more than one public cloud. And we're going to talk also, edge is a huge growth area. Hybrid is something that spans all of these environments. So what Red Hat we've really focused on is you need to have that consistency to make sure that no matter where you go, you can leverage those capabilities. You don't have to relearn things all of the time. And the effort that companies have been going through for a number of years is that modernization. So when I've been talking about hybrid for the next decade, it is not just the location or about cloud itself, but it is the infrastructure, it's the applications, and a very important piece that can't be overlooked is your people, your process, and the tooling. All of those things need to go through a modernization journey, and that sets us up for what we're going to talk about, because Kubernetes is an enabling technology. Kubernetes is not a silver bullet, but it can give that consistency across the environment wherever I am across all of those environments. And that's why Kubernetes has become not only the de facto standard for container orchestration, but really one of the underlying foundational layers for as we build our cloud architectures themselves, and very much has become table stakes today. So Kubernetes is almost a little bit boring these days because it is everywhere. Every cloud provider has Kubernetes. Platforms have Kubernetes. It just becomes that base layer for how I think about my cloud environment. So let's dig into some of the big trends, changes, things to look at in 2021 that might be a little different than what we've done for the last couple of years. All right, trend number one. I mentioned that it's not just about the infrastructure. Of course, as infrastructure people, we always knew the only reason we have infrastructure is to support the applications that sit on top of it. One area that has gotten a whole lot of investment and focus for the last few years has been artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that is something that is built wonderfully on top of containerization. So distributed architectures, being able to have things in a microservice architecture are very important. And we've seen real maturation in the AI and ML space over the last couple of years, which sets us up in 2021 to have a big year, not just about hype of AI and ML, but real deployments of these solutions. So the trend and the thing that we wanted to highlight for this item is that we really need to build a software development lifecycle built on containers for AI and ML. You'll see down at the bottom of the slide, I've got a warning there. You want to make sure that we don't just have silos. My operations team, my development team, my security team always need to work together. And it is something that Kubernetes in general can help. The tooling can help for these environments to work together. And so that software development lifecycle is not just throwing things over the wall. Of course, we work in a more agile manner these days, but really having a life cycle where at the end of the day, we can extract the business value of data out of what we're doing. We'd watched that wave of big data happen, and many times those things failed. We know how important data is in the environment today. AI and ML does show great promise to be able to unlock that potential of data if we architect things properly and get our organization lined up on it. All right. So second trend here, we really need to help improve the developer and operational experience. And we want to mention both of those because while containers were a phenomenal technology that really helped drive the unit of consumption closer to the application itself, which means that we should all be looking at things in a very similar way. Understand how the application works. How do I scale it? How do I manage performance? How do I manage that life cycle that we're talking about? But what we haven't seen in the cloud world too much is things need to be simpler. We'll be talking, one of the later trends is there's just the exponential growth of options out there. And from a developer standpoint, what I really don't want to worry about is the underlying infrastructure. You've probably heard a discussion of the serverless trend out there, and forget about the name itself, but what was wonderful about serverless is I can build my application, and I don't really need to think about that underlying infrastructure. The platform that I'm on takes care of that. It was really actually one of the fundamental things of the platform as a service discussion that we'd been having a discussion for more than a decade. So containers actually came out of a PaaS company. So Docker itself came out of a company that was focused on platform as a service. So that underlying capability of making it simple for developers to be able to deploy regardless of infrastructure was there. Not necessarily for portability, as I said, but that consistency of how I build things wherever they are. So the trend here to look at is we've actually seen the blurring of the line between the serverless world and the container world. So Microsoft Azure back in 2017 came out with something called Azure Container Instances. A little bit after that, AWS came out with what they call Fargate, really adding an abstraction layer from the underlying components. And the Kubernetes community, first started by Google and then many other companies, including Red Hat and IBM, have contributed to what's known as Knative. So Knative helps bridge between the container world and the serverless world, really bringing that serverless operational model to containers. So Knative powers not only Red Hat OpenShift serverless, but also Cloud Run from Google's cloud offering. And once again, you're really trying to simplify that environment. Developers can do their things and it deploys. Operators don't want to have to think about too much complexity. So if we can help those environments, make them easier, there's goodness overall. So expect that serverless trend to continue. And as I said, the blurring of the lines between the container and the serverless world. I'll give you a trend 2A if you talk about that overall simplicity. One thing that can really help companies get away from having to manage too many things themselves is if they just use managed services. So we've seen huge growth in managed services. Expect that to kick off even more. Many companies that are doing multi-cloud deployments and companies like MongoDB and of course Red Hat have huge plays when it comes to managed services. All right, trend number 3. Automation. I say back in my analyst days, automation is something that's actually been talked about for decades, but didn't really become truly, automation that wasn't just a piece part in the last couple of years. So what we mean by that is true end-to-end automation. So in the Kubernetes world, we're talking about everything from the installation through upgrades to how I really just manage the entire environment, and not just a single person, but across many roles, I should be able to automate, have that end-to-end automation that spans roles and spans team, because we've really reached the point where we are beyond human scale. And so therefore, to be able to handle machine scale type of operations, and especially today's real-time world, everything changing all the time, I need that automation in this system and, start with that automation first mentality. And absolutely, we are seeing more and more solutions that tie into Kubernetes, and expect that to be a key focus, not only from the tooling standpoint, but if you think from your personnel and how they're doing things, automation needs to just be part of something that they're doing overall. So just like security has to be everyone's job, automation will also impact everyone. And that's where we think that there will be a huge effort here in 2021, and something that will continue for many years. And it's a good thing we have automation ramping up, because as I mentioned, that getting beyond human scale, that really sets us up for the next trend. And that next trend is the edge. And the edge is a big topic. And one of the things that's interesting is, like cloud, edge is one of those terms that if you talk to a number of people, you'll get lots of different definitions. And much of that is based on the lens that you look at this environment. So if you talk to somebody in the telecommunications world, if you talk to somebody that's a public cloud vendor, or if you talk to a typical enterprise, they will all have their views as to what the edge means. And that's a little bit what this slide that you're looking at helps show, is that there is everything from kind of the IoT device through kind of the network edge, and we've seen cloud services that are improving the edge. The important things when we're talking about Kubernetes is, if you had any question whether hybrid was real, we talked about that argument as to like, oh, well, let's shove everything in the public cloud. Well, almost every company is going to have some edge component of what they're doing, and therefore it's going to be hybrid, because I'm going to have all these environments, and edge just solidifies that as a reality, not only of today, but for the foreseeable future, that there will be all of this environment really building on distributed architectures at the end of the day. And edge really highlights that to a very important extent. So there is a big effort in the Kubernetes community to help bring that consistency of operation, that consistency of management out to the edge. So you've probably, if you've looked at the industry and what's happening, there are a number of tool sets out there that are in early stages. Expect in 2021 some maturation in that space, and we should start to see some emerging leaders that will help bring those Kubernetes solutions and extend that multi-cluster management out to the edge. And at the end of the day, what you want to be careful of is that edge does not become an island. There are not only limited physical resources, but most likely you will not have actual people to be able to manage, update, do most of the things that you might do in your data center, or at least programmatically would do in the public cloud out at the edge. So if we can extend that Kubernetes management layer and technology out to the edge, that's going to make it a lot easier for me to be able to manage those environments. And it is just exponential growth out at the edge. So that surface area that I need to be able to manage as well as protect is hugely important. So big important thing to look at the edge and make sure that you understand how to be ready to take advantage of that. And there are lots of data implications, architectural considerations for your application as to how we build them for that edge environment. All right, that brings us to trend number 5. If there haven't been enough technologies that we've thrown out there in the cloud native space, the landscape itself definitely can be a bit of an overload. There was a joke out on the internet I'm showing here on the screen. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation has a landscape which is hundreds of projects and all the different vendors and solutions out there. Somebody said, "Oh, let's make a jigsaw puzzle out of it." And I even have a few friends that had custom jigsaw puzzles built. Well, it's fun to build an actual puzzle if you're sitting at home and looking to do that in your spare time. As an IT organization, putting together all of these integrations and managing how all the different pieces go together and test it really isn't where you want to be spending your time. And it can be daunting. So on top of that Kubernetes layer, everything from service meshes and CI/CD and all the data services that are on top of it, the question that you need to ask yourself is, do you want to have your organization spend its time building a platform, or do you want to go to a vendor partners that can help you because you can obtain a platform that you can purchase? I've seen, look at some of the largest software companies out there that have been in this space. They'll say, oh yeah, I spent 5 years and I had 50 people dedicated on this, and we're really proud of the platform we can build. Well, there's some companies that might make sense for them, but for the vast majority of companies, they don't have the necessary skill sets, and they absolutely don't have the time to spend on building, maintaining, continually testing, and constantly trying to keep up on all of these projects and how they fit in. So that is why we see, as the space has matured, platforms in the container space being so important here. Once again, Kubernetes is just the foundational layer. There are so many pieces on top of that that you need to look at. So those are the 5 trends. I'll give a quick mention here. Of course, I mentioned I work for Red Hat, and the trends I tried to share is what I see overall in the industry. Of course, many of them fit into what Red Hat had been doing before I joined them, and focus areas that they have. One of the nice things working for Red Hat being an open source company, you want to know what we're working on? Most of it is up on GitHub. We put out public roadmaps, and you ask us questions. It's pretty straightforward to understand what we're working on. So what is OpenShift? OpenShift is that container platform that I mentioned in that last trend. So first and foremost, it is the best, most secure, most trusted Kubernetes for the enterprise. So just as a couple of decades ago, Red Hat took the changes and chaos, if you will, of Linux and made it consumable for the enterprise. That is what Red Hat has done for Kubernetes. Thousands of customers running Kubernetes in production, and it's also much more than just Kubernetes. That full platform, many of the projects, but not locking you into a proprietary stack if there are tools and pieces that you want to use. What we always say is known in this space is batteries are included, but replaceable. So that is what Red Hat has been doing. We've, as I mentioned, not only thousands of customers across all verticals, but take UPS. UPS helped build a new application portfolio. How do they accelerate their speed? Of course, a company that's known for how fast they can deliver something. Red Hat helped them along their digital journey. Data, of course, hugely important as to how they leverage things. Another example I'll give you, HCA Healthcare is an example of they leverage the OpenShift platform, and with some of that AI goodness underneath, they could actually process data and help diagnose sepsis even faster, which is so important to help improve care and save lives. So just so many examples out there. I've got over 100 public references of OpenShift and leveraging the cloud native capabilities, Kubernetes at its core. So with that, I do want to say thank you. Of course, there's questions you can post. I'm going to look. I think there's a few questions here in the chat itself that I'll answer before I go. But if you have any follow-up questions, I'm really easy to get a hold of on Twitter. I'm just @Stu. If you want to email me, I'm just stu@redhat.com. Would love your feedback. Send me your questions. If something I went through a little bit too fast, would love to be able to answer your questions. So please do let me know. With that, let me turn and look and see a couple of questions come in. What can I answer? All right. It's a question we get a lot is, OpenShift in Kubernetes. Is OpenShift Kubernetes? How does that work? Because, it's a product. So first of all, just like Red Hat Enterprise Linux is Linux, OpenShift is Kubernetes. But as I said, it is more than Kubernetes. So at its core, absolutely it is Kubernetes. Everything that Red Hat puts into the changes, all the security things all go upstream so that the community can benefit from that. And Red Hat is always hugely supportive of other companies that are supporting the open source communities. So the projects we work on, most of them weren't started by Red Hat. We are typically in, if not number one, number two, usually in the top 5 or 10 contributors to many of the projects in the CNCF and in the enterprise space. So absolutely, OpenShift is Kubernetes. It is the best Kubernetes and it's for enterprise, but it is much more than that because many of those other projects on top of that build that full platform. If you go actually do a quick Google search, is OpenShift Kubernetes, you'll find a nice ebook that our organization put out that goes through it in much more detail than I can here. All right. Another thing. Of course, competitive question. Amazon announced product EKS and ECS Anywhere. Does that invalidate what Red Hat is doing? First and foremost, want to say Amazon, a very good partner of Red Hat. We actually are in preview right now of the Red Hat OpenShift on AWS. Which is known as ROSA, R-O-S-A. So the enterprise Kubernetes offering, if you want it, it is available through Amazon, which means it's in the console. It is, managed by SREs, but, sales support and everything. It's very much as if you bought it a native AWS service. But AWS, ECS, and EKS services that they'd have for a number of years. Of course, ECS is Amazon's own container orchestration. EKS is their Kubernetes offering. And what AWS is doing is that they really announced a more comprehensive hybrid strategy, and they can put those environments in on premises or even sounds like they're going to offer those in other clouds, which is great to see that. It is the message we've been giving the industry and working with our customers for a number of years. Of course, from a competitive nature, we've got thousands of customers. We work across all of those environments. We have deeper integrations with other cloud providers than we would expect AWS to have. And in a data center, we've done so much work over the years to work in every environment. And some of those environments are going to be on AWS solutions like Outposts. So again, there is always that co-opetition, but great to see the hybrid message that we've seen AWS and others embracing is the reality that we've seen and the hard work we've been working on with our customers and partners for many years. All right, I think I got time for one last question. Let me see. Investment should organizations be making in talents, competencies, and technologies? I do love this question. As I talked about in the presentation, we look at that modernization journey. The people, the tooling is such an important piece of it. And fundamentally, one of the key value propositions of the hybrid and the solutions that we're offering at Red Hat is that consistency. The toughest thing moving from one environment to another is really having your people understand, how do I optimize for that environment? Not just from a technology standpoint. I need to think about the costs. I need to understand about any trade-offs between various solutions. So what OpenShift really offers that's different from what we talked about in PaaS a few years ago is used to build, it was kind of a hard platform. It was like an aircraft carrier that you land on and it could go various places. What's nice today is that I can leverage OpenShift and not only leverage the capabilities and consistency of what OpenShift does, but the underlying services of those clouds or the infrastructure that I'm on can be surfaced up. So it is more natively in the cloud environments and natively in all environments. So from a skill set standpoint, what you really need to look at is how do I enable my team to be able to add more value to the business? So security is an area that can always use more attention. I know many companies that I talked to over the years that they always had those security items that got pushed off for another quarter. Consistency. If I can have a solid, reliable infrastructure layer and let me focus on more security things, or building more data services or building new applications, that's going to be good. So the recommendation in general is if you can try to think up the stack a little bit more. The goal of Red Hat and many of our peers in the industry is to help solidify that underlying infrastructure so that you can spend less time on the undifferentiated heavy lifting of infrastructure and more time on the value add things for your business. So with that, as I said, love if you reach out with any questions. Would love your feedback as to what you thought from the presentation. I'm Stu Miniman, and thank you for joining me for this session.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the Monday edition of the headlines. First up on DevOps.com is an article that discusses how organizations can make self-service IT more intelligent. Many organizations have implemented self-service IT as a way to strike a balance between control and agility. Self-service IT often includes a pre-approved catalog of resources that developers and engineers can access themselves regardless of where they are through a single portal. That provides both the speed and control, keeping both DevOps and IT teams happy. But it's not enough. Today's multi-cloud and hybrid IT environments are adding a level of complexity that self-service IT can't accommodate effectively. Self-service IT is essential. It needs to grow more intelligent to remain effective, though. This article takes a look at some of the issues a more intelligent self-service IT approach can reduce or mitigate, and ways organizations can go about bringing more intelligence to self-service IT. And we have the next in a series of conversations I have with members of the DevOps Institute ambassadors. Each month we choose a topic for discussion, and this month's topic was value stream management. It's a great topic all the way around. For this discussion, I had this pleasure of speaking with Siddharth Parikh, who is the Global DevOps COE lead at NatWest Group, Garima Bajpal, who is the Canada DevOps Community of Practice, and Steve Pereira, who is the founder of Visible. As with the others, this article includes the video and a transcript of our discussion. These folks are experts in their field and offered some amazing insights, and I highly encourage you to give this article and the video a look. All right, in news, Data Theorem added to its portfolio a cloud secure analyzer that promises to provide full stack visibility into applications through the client, network, and cloud layers of a distributed computing environment. Cloud Secure extends the existing Analyzer engine offering to identify vulnerabilities found in applications running on public cloud services. That enables DevOps teams to analyze application runtimes using a tool that can be integrated within a CI/CD platform as part of a DevSecOps workflow. Cloud Secure now also looks at the client layer for both mobile and web applications, as well as REST and GraphQL APIs at the network layer. That provides a much more comprehensive approach to attack surface management. Considering the single biggest attack surface is now all of the APIs that need to be secured, this is a critical capability. All right, over on Container Journal, we have an article that explains how to deploy applications to Kubernetes from CircleCI with Cloud Foundry. We all know that Kubernetes can be a complicated animal, and deploying applications to Kubernetes has been known to stress out software development teams because of its complexity and its steep learning curve. But the open source Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes project aims to enable developers to deploy their applications to a Kubernetes cluster without having to use Kubernetes directly. This article is a tutorial that shows how the open source Circle CI/CD platform works with Cloud Foundry to deploy on whatever infrastructure developers want with a single command. Circle CI is the CI/CD platform of choice in this tutorial, but Cloud Foundry integrates with many other CI/CD platforms to provide a simple way to deploy easily on Kubernetes without the stress associated with using Kubernetes. All right, and in news, Solo.io announced a bevy of updates to its core platforms at its online SoloCon 2021 conference, including the launch of a managed Glue Cloud service for deploying and updating the open source Istio service mesh for Kubernetes environments. The company also updated its Glue Mesh platform to provide visibility into instances of Istio spanning multiple Kubernetes clusters, and updated its Glue Edge platform to provide a full-featured API gateway for edge computing applications that now has all the capabilities of the Glue platform it is based on. We're still relatively early in terms of service mesh adoption, but Solo.io is making moves to position itself as if not the dominant player, as more organizations look to the technology as they deploy a new generation of microservices-based applications. Good stuff all the way around there. All right, over on Security Boulevard, we have news of a report that more malware is targeting Apple's Mac OS, and the numbers are rising fast. It seems the days of the bulletproof Mac have ended. According to Atlas VPN, 674,273 new malware samples were found in 2020. That's up from just 56,556 samples detected in 2019. That's an increase of 1,092%, with malicious actors creating an average of 1,847 threats aimed at Apple's desktop operating system every day last year. That's mind-boggling. There are a number of factors contributing to this rise, not the least of which is the increase in popularity of Apple machines. A steady increase in Mac sales makes developing malware for Mac OS more lucrative for hackers. At the same time, the establishment of malware as a service has made creating malicious code easier than ever before. This article takes a look at the report in depth and offers up some tips for those organizations that use Macs, and these days who doesn't, to help them stay protected. And finally, we have an article about how one organization set up its security operations center in the middle of a pandemic. Creating a SOC can be a complex endeavor, even in the best of times. But with employees scattered to the four winds because of remote work, that complexity has been compounded. This article is a step-by-step guide of how Talion went about designing its security operations center, finding the right location and getting things operational without any customer downtime, and was able to succeed where others have not. It's always great when stories have a good ending. All right, this is Charlene O'Hanlon. That was the headlines for you today. Check back tomorrow when I will have a fresh batch for you. Until then, have a great day. Stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Erez Yalan, who is the head of security research at Checkmarx. And we are going to talk about cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. Hey, Erez, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. First time here, and I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. It's always a pleasure to talk with you guys, and cybersecurity is always such it's a fascinating topic. Just in general, but you hear about all these different areas of cybersecurity that developers specifically really have to kind of keep in mind. And cross-site scripting is something I know that kind of goes beyond application development, but it really is an important part of the cybersecurity framework, if you will, or piece of the puzzle, if you will. But you guys. You guys recently found some cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in the Desk Pro remote help desk software. So tell me a little bit about that, what you guys found.
Sure. So let's start with describing a bit what XSS is. Cross-site scripting, or as abbreviated XSS, is something that for security people, it sounds like it's here for as long as we can remember. And this is actually probably true, because this is one of the first web vulnerabilities that were found, and it's a problem that, every time that there's a new generation of developers, we promise them next time there will not be XSS, next time there will not be XSS, but it keeps on coming, and we see it all the time. To understand what an XSS vulnerability is, it's easier when you know exactly how the requests and responses go between a web browser, web client, and the server. But if I need to kind of cut it for a short explanation, we assume, and the browser assumes, that everything that comes from the server is theoretically safe. And when a cross-site scripting vulnerability exists on a website, it means that an attacker can somehow inject their own script, their own code, that is then returned to the web browser of the user, of the victim user. Then the web browser actually runs this script thinking that it is okay, thinking that is the user who is originally running it, kind of masquerading, maybe. We can say it's masquerading our victim user. There are several types. I won't go into that, but in general, the idea here is the same. Some sort of malicious payload runs towards the server side and then returns back to the user to do something evil. And by evil, it can be several things. It can change the content of the website. It can we've seen some attackers try to mine cryptocurrency on the web clients. And the most important or the most severe issue is that it can sometimes steal cookies. And the reason that it's a problem is that cookies have session tokens in them. And if an attacker puts their hand on a session token, they have an active session of a user, and then they can really masquerade as this user and to trick some websites thinking that they are the authenticated user.
Yeah. I've been hearing a lot about that. And as a matter of fact, I think I just heard very recently that Google said that it's going to actually be doing away with cookies, and instead they're going to be doing some sort of security sandbox or something like that, which may be one way for them to kind of maybe decrease or maybe even hopefully eliminate this, at least this type of cross-site scripting. So cookies, I think, is a much larger conversation. We could talk for hours about, whether cookies are a good thing or a bad thing. I can tell you from my personal experience, I'm not really fond of them. I don't like having things follow me around the web, but that's anotro conversation for another time.
Topic.
But I am interested in learning a little bit more about what you guys found with the Desk Pro, the remote help desk software, the cross-site scripting there, because obviously so many organizations are kind of working remotely because of the pandemic and the need to work from home. It seems like this would be a pretty evil thing for hackers to get into, because remote help desks are becoming or have become a lot more popular during the pandemic. So, how severe is this threat, and what do organizations really need to kind of keep an eye on?
Okay, I'll give you the bottom line. I'll give you a spoiler. So, vulnerabilities can be different levels of severe. Here we found some pretty severe ways to exploit these XSS vulnerabilities. So basically, as you said, given the shift to remote work and the need of software that enables virtual collaboration, our team, the Checkmark Security Research team, we decided to check Desk Pro platform. They have a pretty awesome product, I must say. And in generally, they have a responsible disclosure program and a bug bounty program. So they actually allow researchers to check and see what they can find. This is a very mature and responsible way of looking at the community as someone who is here to help you. And this is awesome. And this, I must say that it's very nice to see more and more vendors actually having bug bounty programs. What we managed to find, most of the software were very, very secure, but we managed to find a way to inject successfully a a payload, as I explained before.
Mm-hmm.
This payload was using a vulnerability from I said there are several types of XSS. It's called a stored XSS. This means we actually injected the payload to the database of the Desk Pro users. And then what happens is that every time that a specific person goes into a specific web page, this case it was a dashboard page, which means it's a very popular page probably.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Their browser is being attacked by our script. And this script attacked two kinds of users. One user is the admin user, and the other users are the agent users, those who actually give the assistance to the people. You can imagine that both of them are pretty severe, because as an admin, if I manage to steal the session, as I explained before, I suddenly have magical admin powers. This means I can see everything on the system. It means I can add and remove users. And I think that probably the most severe thing we could do, we could wipe an entire database of a customer of Desk Pro. So this was one pretty severe issue.
Yeah.
The second type of attack we could do was very, very similar, also relying on a stored XSS.
Mm-hmm.
But there we became a bit more sneaky. We managed to, by using this malicious script that we built, we changed or added actually an email to the email of the agent. By doing that, we were able to go later, not even during this session. We could do it in a week. Go to the Desk Pro website or platform and say, I forgot my password, give me the password, and then we could get to our new email, the password of the agent, actually practically locking the agent out. And then we become the agent instead of them, obviously with access to all the tickets, all the problems, sometimes maybe personal issues, sometimes maybe security issues, but literally having access to the entire board and the entire ticketing system of an organization.
That is particularly scary. I can't imagine that that the folks over at Help Desk or Desk Pro were thrilled to hear about that. But to your point, the fact that they are being very proactive in offering a bug bounty program and welcoming security researchers to go in and find these bugs, I think is definitely kudos to them for being proactive in that respect. Why do you think cross-site scripting is such a difficult problem to solve? It seems like to your point, we keep hearing about them, and it's not a problem that seems to be going away anytime soon. So what is it that makes it so difficult?
So I think, first of all, you're right. We're seeing them out really on a daily basis. It doesn't seem like it's going away. And there are probably several reasons for that. When you look at a specific vulnerability, when someone shows you the vulnerability, it's easy to solve. It's clear what goes into where, into what and where.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we have so many entry points to software these days, and especially when we're talking about modern day software. Everything just zips from side to side, from the cloud to the server, from servers to microservices. I can throw some more buzzwords here. Containers from Kubernetes and Docker and all those. But everything is connected by APIs and by requests. And we have more and more entry points like that. Okay. Somehow, sometimes, almost always, someone forgets one of them. And even the best places with a very, very systematic way and methodology of covering these sometimes miss something. And as we know, the vendors need to find all of them. The hackers need to find one. So it's kind of an unfair fight, but this is what happens.
Yeah. Do you see any ways that the industry as a whole can help remediate cross-site scripting? Is there maybe a particular type of tooling or new, I don't know, security methodology or something that will kind of help make cross-site scripting, maybe less of an issue if it's, if not eliminated altogether? Is there something we can do?
Okay, so at the moment, I don't think we can really eliminate it, but I think that the situation is actually getting a bit better. Maybe it's because of better awareness or maybe better education of developers themselves. Sometimes also the testing tools that are out there, including a shameless plug, Checkmarks, where I work. These are automated security tools that help with finding a lot of those, XSS and others. It definitely helps, but to be honest, as I started, I don't believe that it's really going away. We just need to be more aware of that and learn how to fix it quickly.
All right. Well, Erez, thank you so much for kind of walking me through what you guys found with the Desk Pro remote help desk software, cross-site scripting in general. Obviously, it's a problem that we're going to continue to grapple with for a while. Hopefully, eventually, the industry will catch up with the cross-site scripting vulnerabilities and try to get those remediated sooner rather than later. But kudos to those organizations that are actually being proactive and offering bug bounty programs to find these bugs. And it's always great to see kind of that more proactive stance being taken. So, but Erez, thank you again for kind of walking me through it and taking the time today. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Alvin. I had fun.
All right, great. Well, please stay tuned. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stick around.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Aaron Stewart, who is the founder of a site called job.com. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I can see by your background that you've got a lot going on in your life. So,
as we discussed, yes, I'm moving house. So listen, it's typical of the current, climate that you catch us in these most private moments. But yes, I'm moving home at this very moment. So a U-Haul background is a good way to describe it, right? Yeah,
great promo for U-Haul there. Okay, well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the effects of the pandemic on different workforces, and more specifically, females in the workforce. And we've been having a lot of conversations on TechStrong TV since the pandemic began about really how it's impacting work in general. And we haven't had as many conversations that really kind of drill down into how different communities or groups, especially in the IT sector, are faring as far as employment is concerned. So You guys, obviously, your site has a very, very good handle on what's been happening in the economic climate and the employment sector. So I wonder if you could share some of the insights that you guys have discovered during the pandemic, and really what it means to the industry, especially as it relates to females in the workforce.
Yeah, so I think, and it's an interesting topic in a sense of still some of the ingrained issues overall with employment. So one of the biggest affected industries across the United States has been the childcare industry, and childcare has been far less readily available for workers. And then specifically the burden of childcare, not that it's a negative burden, but the burden of childcare is now predominantly being laid onto female workforce and female workers. And this sort of spill through of then these women having to remove themselves from the labor force in order to look after their children. Now, I could go down a rabbit hole with this, and I probably would like to a little bit in a sense of why does that default onto women, and why should that just be the women's a problem? And then it starts to unravel other statistical data that I was only looking at yesterday, which comes down to pay gap. It comes down to pay gap. If you are a working family, you sit together and make an educated decision on, we're going through a tough time right now. One of us is going to need to stay at home to look after the children. Logically, it would say then that the highest earner should remain out in the labor force, correct? And sadly, that's still men. And that's represented because female workers are still grossly underrepresented within senior roles within companies. And we looked at this data only yesterday. And it's a real shame for them within their careers that they have this automatic burden on them, because realistically, in this day and age, this impact should have been equally split. But again, because it's not represented and women aren't represented and the pay gap is still in existence, even in 2021, sadly, women have been grossly more affected by the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you as a female, certainly there are issues that have cropped up since the pandemic began, that because it is kind of the default, if you will, the I don't want to call it a bias, but it really is a bias, a gender bias toward, the woman as the nurturer, as the protector, as the caregiver. And even in some households, it doesn't matter whether the female is the higher paid earner. It still, that burden falls on her a lot of times. And so, I'm sure there are just as many females out there who are still working full-time jobs and have now taken on that full-time caregiver responsibility. So even while they're working at home, they're basically juggling 3 jobs instead of one job or even 2 jobs. And in fact, I posted a little meme on Facebook the other day that was 2 women talking to each other. One was an HR person and the other, and she said, so the job, so in this job, you have to do the work of 2 men. And the other woman said, oh, so it's only part-time.
Part-time, yeah.
So,
I see that exactly.
I thought, well, that's pretty indicative. But yeah, I mean, when you think about it, we women in general, especially women who have families and a home life, they are tasked with so many more responsibilities outside the job that in many respects do make it a full-time job or multiple jobs if they are caregivers for their parents as well. So do you see that as a result, we're seeing any direct or indirect correlation between the gap in the workforce because lots of females have had to leave the workforce, and productivity rates, or any other kind of negative issues that have cropped up because of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's statistically going to be $65 billion worth of less wages and productivity and taxes paid because of this pullout of female labor, which is a material impact.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a statistic that's actually, you can Google that now. That's kind of made public news now. It's $65 billion. It's a material impact, but there's also the material impact towards diversity too. We are striving forward to increase diversity in the labour force, whether it's race, sex, both. And this is a material step back in that process, which also comes at almost an immeasurable cost. So, you know, it pains me because, you know, I feel very passionate about it. One, you know, I have a fantastic wife, but two, I have 4 beautiful daughters, you know, and I take this impact to, you know, female workforce and diversity very seriously, you know, because it still highlights just how much change needs to still happen.
Sure. And you know, certainly in IT, there is, you know, there's already that dearth of females in the workplace, you know, filling out the critical IT roles that are out there, especially in cybersecurity. That's kind of a huge area where, you know, that whole space could use more workers in general. I mean, there's a huge gap there in workers, and so to have that entire section or sector of the workforce, meaning the females, not able to really produce and be as you know, as involved as they really could be and should be, is very. It's a sad commentary, actually, on, you know, the way things are going right now. But do you expect, as the pandemic rolls down, do you expect that we're going to see more females coming back into the workforce as things kind of level out? And if so, are we going to see any changes because of that?
Well, I think that, so out of, you know, this kind of, you know, negative moment, you know, the way to turn anything into, you know, to draw anything from it, we should look at this as an opportunity to learn, to progress forward, which, one, highlighting that there's still a major issue, but two, there's going to be a resurgence for the demand of labour. Okay. And because females will be that latent potential of labour supply, there will be a huge demand for them. And also during this time, and I, you know, I'm confident with this over the last few years, especially, you know, the most largest employers, largest companies are striving towards diversity. So if you're a female, over the next few months, you know, I'm hoping, I'm imploring you all to go back to work, you know, to take advantage of your career opportunities. You are going to see a resurgence in opportunity, demand. And they should use this opportunity when there is an increase in demand to allow themselves to take advantage of increases in salary and the benefits that they should get in employment, because, you know, supply and demand. There's a limited supply and the demand is high. You know, use this opportunity to leverage yourselves into a better position within the workplace.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you if you thought that we might actually see more equality in pay as a result of this. So it kind of sounds like
I do.
Just by default. Yeah.
Yep.
But you know, but you know, supply and demand is one thing, but yeah, you know, just kind of changing people's minds is quite another. So,
well, there's still very much a bias within the hiring process. There's many studies that have been done to prove that, both you know, sex and race. But again, I think with an increased investment from major companies towards pushing towards diversity, I think it's going to continue to close that up.
All right. Has your site seen maybe greater numbers or fewer numbers of females leaving the workforce in the cybersecurity or IT sector?
You know, I mean, funny enough, cybersecurity is actually a specialism of ours. I can't comment specifically on the female side. It's one of those things that, you know, on the job board side of things, we don't track if you're male or female. And actually, one of the things that we do on our side, to increase diversity in the workforce, we actually anonymize socio-demographic data out of resumes, because we don't want you to be able to be biased towards someone's name, someone's gender. You just need to hire them based on their skills. So again, you know, we inadvertently try and stay out of it to help promote it. So
that's great.
Yeah. So we're listen, we're as I said, you know, I have a vested interest with 4 daughters. You know, we're here to promote diversity and equality within the workforce.
That's great. That's great. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking a couple minutes and talking with me about it. Obviously, it's a topic that continues to be of interest to many people in many different areas. And until we get this whole diversity, inclusion, and equality thing wrapped up, I have a feeling we're going to be having lots more conversations on this topic. So thank you very much, Aaron. I do appreciate it. And best of luck with your move.
Thank you. I appreciate the vote of confidence, and I've really enjoyed being on the show today. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Well, we'll have you back on another time. We'll talk more about women in IT. All right,
Definitely.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned. Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the Monday edition of the Webinars Previews. As I always tell you, we have so many great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. So here are 3 that are coming up very soon in the hopes that you will mark your calendar and join us. The first one is called Code to Cloud Visibility, an essential framework for DevOps success. It is happening Tuesday, tomorrow, March 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and it's sponsored by Splunk. This webinar focuses on the Code to Cloud philosophy, which is the practice of making sure that engineering teams have complete visibility across the entire software development lifecycle in terms of both breadth and depth. So with code to cloud visibility, easy for me to say, organizations understand the impact of application development from feature definition to running it in production. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm especially excited to be having this conversation with Chris Riley from Splunk about code to cloud visibility. So yay. Okay, the next webinar is called Application Security in the Rapid Digital Transformation Age. This one is also happening Tuesday. This one is at March 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard, and it is sponsored by Digital AI. We all know that web and mobile applications are pretty much defining today's digital landscape. And as applications evolve and organizations embrace digital transformation to generate new revenue streams, unfortunately, application security is often being given short shrift. So consequently, the sensitive data that live on networks and devices and intellectual property as well is at risk. So this webinar will focus on how digital transformation is affecting the application security landscape, how to develop web and mobile applications with designed-in security, and how to integrate application protection into existing DevOps processes. All right, the third and final webinar I want to let you know about today is called Value Stream Management, Meaning Before Metrics. This one is happening Wednesday, March 31st at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and it is sponsored by Platora. This is yet another webinar taking a look at value stream management, this one from the perspective of metrics. You know, organizations use metrics to understand what's going well and what isn't within their organization. But there is a method to choosing the right metrics that can help shape decision making. And much of that revolves around where an organization is on its DevOps journey. So this webinar focuses on that. So some of the key takeaways for this webinar include how to evaluate the current state of your DevOps evolution, how to define the metrics that matter to your organization, and how to leverage metrics for continuous improvement. It's going to be a great conversation. Helen Beal is going to be on it from the DevOps Institute, Jeffrey Keyes, and then we'll have one other special guest speaker on the webinar. It's going to be a great one all the way around. All 3 of these webinars are totally worth checking out if you have the time. I implore you to join us for all of them. All right, that is it for this edition of the Webinars Preview. Please check back with me on tomorrow when I will have a brand new batch for you. Until then, have a great day. Stay safe. All right, everybody, welcome back. Next up, we have Mitchell Ashley in his Analyst Corner segment. He talks about the growth in low-code and no-code over the past year and whether it's sustainable, and also takes a look at whether no-code, low-code fits in DevOps processes, pipelines, and tool chains Great discussion. Let's give it a listen.
Hi, and welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO of the Accelerated Strategies Group. Today, I want to talk about low-code, no-code. I know it's not a new topic on Analyst Corner. It's come up a few times, but it happens to be an area that we're doing quite a bit of work in, doing some research in, and I'm getting people reaching out to me about it, saying, hey, what are you doing? What's happening? Can we hear more about what you're doing, the research that you're doing? We're so anxious to get the report on what you're creating, which I'll put a link to some things that you can get access to at the end or in the text of this video. So low code, no code, that's a relatively new term. It's not something we've been using for 20 or 30 years. It's essentially meaning it's an application or way to create applications, business functionality, business value, without requiring someone who knows particularly scripting or programming languages. Now, I say that in low-code applications, you still have to program in logic. You still have to define, oftentimes, logic, like the flow of a flow of screens or editing on fields, sometimes macros, even formulas in a spreadsheet. You could argue that going back to Lotus 1-2-3 and even VisiCalc, those were low-code, no-code applications, right? We're building logic into spreadsheets and calculating and reporting information. So that's it's an interesting field, and I think particularly in the last year, with the elevation of software and the importance of its role that it's playing in our worlds, low-code, no-code's got a lot of attention. Now, this, again, wasn't something that happened in just a year. It's been building and being used for decades, but it has become more of a legitimate environment in the eyes of many more people than those that were using it over that time period. Now, in my experience, running IT organizations as well as creating products is no application is an island. No application works without anything else. I mean, I can't think of an example. Even your security software still needs updates, virus signature updates or whatever it might be. Something as secure as that still has to talk to other services, other data sources, other applications, and oftentimes combined with other apps to really kind of complete or extend the functionality of what you might be doing in a low-code, no-code app. And I'm always interested in, I lived through the era of no shadow IT, and frankly worked with people who said, no, we shall not have shadow IT. And I'm kind of like, yeah, good luck with that. We haven't been able to stop Dropbox. How are you going to be able to stop people doing anything else, right? So my attitude about running an IT organization was, how do you become a service organization? Because they're going to come to you, whether using Dropbox or anything else at some point, and asking you for security, data, or application integration. We've talked about those things before. So the same thing is true with low-code, no-code apps, right? They're going to need access to data in other applications or databases or cloud or on-prem legacy applications, whatever it might be. They're going to need access to security. They're going to need to hand off transactions or do exchange transactions between different applications as part of their functionality. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this research, is really to understand where do you start to cross that line of, I can get what I need done inside the environment I'm in, whether it's as simple as a spreadsheet, some aren't very simple, or a platform that might be a full-blown low-code, no-code platform. There's a whole nother area, I think, to look at, and I'm actually talking with other companies about this exact topic, which is, how does low-code, no-code fit into DevOps and Agile? How does it fit into a DevOps tool chain, into a workflow pipeline? Because if you buy the premise, which I'm guessing you probably do, that no application is an island, that there's going to need to be coordinated, sequenced, synchronized delivery of functionality. In a small company, you can reach across the aisle or across Slack or Team and say, hey, can you do this for me? Yeah, got it, done. Okay, released it, you're good. Now I can do what I need. But in more complex applications, larger applications, distributed applications, cloud, hybrid, multi-cloud, et cetera, it's a complex environment. And you have to orchestrate how you're going to release software. It's not going to do you any good to release your low-code, no-code app or the next version of it in production and have the data missing that it's reliant upon to complete whatever value creation that it's performing. So that's the purpose of our research. And we'll be extending that into other areas, into DevOps and tool chains and pipeline workflows. But there are definitely points where we all kind of pass the bubble of whatever environment we're working in, whether it's on a low-code, no-code team or the bubble of IT or the bubble of whatever, we can do what we need to do with the things that are around us and the tools that we have. And then we have to start getting help or resources from other people. So I encourage you to check out the survey. It doesn't take very long to complete. It's about 5 to 7 minutes. I mean, SurveyMonkey says 7 minutes. I think most people do it in 5. Really easy. And the information we will share openly and freely. The report will be available for free, and you'll be able to get it through Accelerated Strategy site at accelst.com, as well as some other sources. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later down the road, a few weeks or so. So thanks for joining me today. And if you're doing some interesting low-code, no-code work, or you're a vendor in that space, reach out. I'd love to talk with you, and we can collaborate on how this is impacting the industry and maybe how we can also help low-code, no-code when it needs to be part of a larger development process and flow across an organization. Take care. I wish you the best.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right, that wraps up today's episode of TechStrong TV. I hope everybody enjoyed today's broadcast as much as I did. Just to let you know, tomorrow we celebrate 1 year of TechStrong TV, and we are all very, very excited. I'm especially excited because of the cake. But we're going to do a special broadcast of TechStrong TV with some of our favorite interviews over the past year and some of our recollections, if you will. So we're very, very excited about it, and I hope you can join us for that. That is happening tomorrow. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day, and please stay safe.